Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to today's stream and collab with the girls. So excited to be here today to talk about unconditional love. Before we begin, do you guys want to introduce yourselves real fast? Do you think that's probably good? I already put your links in the chat. If you guys see, it's the pinned message on the chat. You can go ahead and follow these ladies on their socials. Why don't we go ahead and start with Madame Genevieve? Tell people where to find you, who you are, and then we'll go to the next.
Awesome. So, as mentioned, I am Madame Genevieve or Jen. Um, and you can find me on Twitter, YouTube, all of the places. My links, as Brittany mentioned, are going to be down below. Check that out. And I do a lot of sex positive, feminist type streams, a lot about sexual wellness, things of that nature. So, Brittany and I had some things in common, and now we have these talks once a month, which is awesome.
Yay. I'm so glad. I was just thinking about it the other day. I'm like, wow, what a nice little group of people that we have together. Like, just to come together, our energies are so good and complementary. I was just like really grateful for it. So I'm so happy you guys are here today. Harmony, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Harmony, also known as Maiden Monster online. I am a full service in-person sex worker, and I participate in some of these talks. I'm really interested in philosophy, just kind of as a hobby. So yeah, that's who I
Perfect.
am.
And Arena.
Hi, everyone. My name's Arena. You can find me on my YouTube channel. I make a lifestyle fashion content, and recently I've been on a movie review kick. So if you're interested in that, come and check me out, hang out. And I love doing these panels with the girlies. They're my favorite time of the month.
Perfect. Okay, so today I don't actually recall. Oh no, I do. I saw another stream talking about unconditional love, which sparked it in my mind. Oh, this discussion around unconditional love is so interesting to me. I just even watched another video discussing it, and the way that the conversation normally goes is love conditional? Is usually the question that people start on. Is love conditional? So, I thought we could start there with each other. What do you guys think? Is love conditional?
I think the purest form of love is not conditional, is unconditional. I think that's generally the type of love that we feel for our children, for our pets, where there's just no strings attached, right?
Mm.
Like you're gonna love them no matter what. When it comes to like a romantic relationship, I do still believe that unconditional love is the goal. But that doesn't mean love without boundaries in any of these relationships. So I think that's kind of an important definition, right? Like we are not tolerating abusive behaviors or things that are crossing our boundaries, but there's not a condition on the love either.
Yeah, see, that's kind.
Oh,
God,
sorry.
go ahead.
Go.
Oh, okay, I was just gonna say, I think for me the word condition is kind of like is hard for me because I come from my worldview, I guess, is an adaptive, like evolutionary one. And so there's always like constraints and like conditions, to make anything possible. But I don't see conditions as like a bad thing. You know what I mean? So on one hand, it's like, of course, well, you need the condition of even having somebody to be in a relationship with, even if it's just relation to yourself. So and like on one hand, it's like, of course, love is conditional. Like everything in this sensing, in our sensing experience requires conditions to exist. But if we my preferred way, I think, I don't want to be like pedantic and be like, oh no, it doesn't exist because of this definition that is. I think I know what like we're talking about when we say it. And so I call it just like self-sacrificing love or self-giving love, where you're not coming from a place where you're looking to either like protect yourself and like out of fear, like, oh, am I getting taken advantage of, or like whatever. You're actually able to step outside of that because you probably have that unconditional love for yourself. So then you can actually start to like try to see things from the other person's perspective, so that even when there is conflict, you can act out of that love and continue it. And so it is very much like depending on you being in your like proper self, like ownership. So Yeah.
Okay. Irina, what do you think?
Yeah, I was gonna say, going along the lines of what Harmony was talking about, defining what condition or conditional even means, because when I think about the love, and this is more so from a mother's perspective that a mother would have towards her child, there's a lot of physiological things that go into developing that love, particularly when giving birth, the flow of oxytocin during that process that the baby and mother both get to experience as that happens. And so that's a very physiological thing. And it's almost like the condition is that the mother has received the appropriate dose of oxytocin to be able to bond with her child. And when that doesn't happen, that's often when we get like postpartum depression, where mothers have a hard time connecting with their child. But then you could also argue that them pushing through that is also an act of love. So it's almost like the love that you feel, like the fuzzy little hormones in your brain that I feel when I'm with my cat. It's almost like him providing those for me is almost like that's the exchange we have, the snuggles and everything. I find him very adorable. That benefits me greatly. That's like what he is providing to me as I provide care to him. So that's like the feeling, right? But then there's like the act of love, right? Like you might not even have that fuzzy warm feeling, but you're still going and performing love as an action of taking care of something else. But love as action unconditionally, that would be interesting for me to explore. And then the other question is that I have is, do you unconditionally love yourself?
Mm. Yeah, when
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree with
about,
that. That's
yeah.
key.
First of all, I love the two kitties in both the windows. I see you, Genevieve and Harmony. I love this happening right now. I will say in relation to like love being conditional, I think I go back to what we talked about, I think on the joy, no, I don't remember. Was it the evil podcast? I don't remember what stream we were doing or what we were talking about, but I think I talked to you girls about it. About like I feel like I love everyone, but the love is like a spectrum. So I feel like I love everyone, but the love is different and it shifts over time. So it's not a spectrum just like linear. It's more just like in and out. So I feel like I love everybody in the sense that like from a philosophy perspective, we're all like the same. But then on top of that, I think about the way we have relationships, and I think relationships are conditional. And I don't think the love is what's conditional necessarily, but I also separate what I call unconditional love with what I call inner circle, and what I call like universal philosophy love with what I call like connection with others. So I would say that when I have a connection with others, obviously it's because of love. That's what a connection to me is. It's like love is like what's within me and I'm seeing it within you. We're like connecting on something, like those parts of ourselves. And then when I think of something unconditional, I actually relate it to something that I am shocked when I hear people say it, but they must not mean what I mean when I say it. If my family committed like the most horrendous crimes on earth, like I would still visit them in prison. But when I hear other panels talk about this, they're like, well, obviously I wouldn't go visit my kid if they were like the most horrible monster in the world. And I'm like, yeah, then we're not talking about the same thing. Because to me, like, I love you so much. Not only am I going to hold you accountable and call the cops on you, but I'm going to come visit you. Because, like, out of all the people who could understand you as a consciousness, it would be me, you know? Your family member, your loved one, your mother, whatever. So the idea that like if my child did this, I wouldn't go see them. Like I don't even know why you're birthing children. But then at the same time, since we're animals probably evolved on a planet, I could see an animal being indifferent to their offspring then taking a different turn and making a different decision. So anyways, that's when I think of like is love conditional? I feel like you're asking is the relationship, is my time in your life conditional? And yes, but not the love. Just
That
the
that's a really
interaction.
good definition because I feel like I can be logical about the relationships and the time that I put into them and how I distribute my spoons and all of that, right? And I can choose to make that decision based on what I think is best for me, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't really feel like I have control over who I love. Like even people who I love who have hurt me. Like I found myself reflecting in these situations like, wow, that was painful, that was not acceptable, that crossed a boundary, whatever. But regardless, I still love this person
Mm-hmm.
and I don't that feeling doesn't go away for me. Um so I do think that there is a bit of a difference in that. Like you can have this unconditional love, but then still choose to have boundaries in your relationship and how you participate with said person or being.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but I think we're all old enough. We probably have stories where we've had to put down these boundaries or say to ourselves, like, I love this person so much, but when I'm around them, like, it's not good, or like things don't seem healthy, or, something. But I still like love the consciousness because I really so strongly believe that we are all so like unique as a consciousness, as a soul. But I just don't think we're like, I don't think that changes the safety or the boundaries we need to put into place for this short time we're on earth in terms of like harm reduction. So it's about that like balance. I think sometimes people use unconditional love in order to justify being sort of harmful or malicious,
Hmm.
or you know what I mean? So they go, "Well, if you really loved me," you
Right.
know?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's the
for
opposite of
sure.
love to me. That's not even love.
But
That's
yeah, that's a
like
complete
manipulation. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm. Do you think you
Yeah.
can love manipulation? Do you think those two things are totally different, or do they sometimes overlap, or do we perceive them as overlapping?
A lot of
To my
times I think
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
You go ahead. Yeah, finish. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times we, as just a general whole, can believe that we are in love even in situations where we are being manipulated and
Mm.
not be able to identify that that's what's happening.
Mhm. Mhm. How do you guys feel about that in terms of? No, wait, Harmony, you go first, and then I'll say my thought because I don't want to make you forget yours.
Um, I don't remember.
Oh
Sorry.
no. Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
it wasn't important.
Well, I was gonna say, how do you guys feel about the differences between, like, we've all been in love with people we didn't end up with, or we've all thought we were in love with somebody, and then like, this isn't the person I ended up doing life with. Not that being in love needs to be a lifelong journey. Sometimes you can be momentarily in love. I don't know. That's a whole other discussion, or maybe it's not. But like, it is that question of, if you don't love them anymore, if you're not in love with them anymore, did you ever love them? And then it's the question between like parents and children as well. Like, if are you only feeling that bond of unconditional love with your parents because they're blood related, or because of the bond you're having? It's like so many questions come up. So I don't know where you want to take this, but I I feel like, yeah.
I well, see,
So
I
Arena,
view love is
Arena,
like
and then Harmony,
oh yeah,
because
okay,
Arena,
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead, Arena,
Yeah.
and then Harmony.
I
Sorry.
was gonna say, do we feel that, because what Madame Genevieve brings up and then what you, Brittany, bring up, I almost feel like are almost different ways of looking at unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
Because Brittany, you I think almost frame it as like a choice. I am choosing to unconditionally love you because of the consciousness that you are. Whereas Madame Genevieve, you mentioned how it's not even a choice, right? Like you still have love for certain people, even though they now don't get access to you or they don't get unconditional access. And so, do we view unconditional love as something that happens to you physiologically, or is it a choice or like a decision that you are making to love someone unconditionally? And then Brittany also asked a question that I
In
forgot.
relation to parenting.
Yeah. I think, oh, if you stopped loving someone, did you ever love them at
Yeah.
all? That's a very interesting question to me because I I feel that I've been in love several times, like 4 times. And while I don't allow, all of my ex's access, I still am like, I hope you're fine." Like, I hope everything's okay. Like, I don't
Yeah.
wish any ill will on anybody, so
Do we want to, in order to answer this question, I think most efficiently, do we want to define our relationship with unconditional love? Because I think I have a relationship with it that's really like clear to me. But I would like to hear if you ladies feel like you experience it, and then what is it like for you? Yeah. And then Harmony, did you wait? I forgot. Did you want to say something earlier, or did you forget the thought?
Um, I wanted to respond to your question. I think,
Please.
yeah. Yeah, about I think that I view love as a process, not as like a feeling. It's not a feeling. It's a process that engages like our agency. Um and yeah, what were we sorry, my brain is fogging out.
No, that's great. Well, why don't we start answering, like, what is your relationship with unconditional love? Who wants to share first?
I don't know if this is exactly what you mean. It's kind of a combination of your question and an earlier one. I don't feel for me that it's necessarily a choice. I do feel that it's something that is,
Mm.
right? Or at least as I experience it. Maybe I'm having some sort of subconscious decision making, but I'm not aware of it. I don't know why. I don't know that I could tell you succinctly and accurately why I have unconditional love for certain beings versus others. I mean, I guess there's like the obvious things like this is my cat. I adopted it. I love it. It lives with me. We cuddle every day, et cetera, et cetera. But that doesn't feel like it's really justifying it. Like there's something more that I can't quite put into words that's just this feeling of our souls being entwined or connected in some way, or our spirits. I know that sounds really woo-woo.
I mean, well, love is kind of woo-woo. Like love is kind of a
Yeah.
woo-woo thing. So, Arena, Harmony,
Anyone
which one
else?
want to go first?
I kind of remembered what I was going to say. Sorry about my
Okay.
brain.
No, go.
So I was writing it down. So going back to like what I've mentioned in some of our like previous streams, I do believe that we're animals, mammals, primates, and persons. And so I do believe that our physiology comes into play, like our animalness comes into play with our nervous system. Literally, when your nervous system gets triggered, you stop being able to like connect in like a human person to person kind of capacity. And so like our capacity for things like love, like are severely limited. And same with like the mammal level. Like if we have attachment wounds at the mammal level, that really impacts our ability to love and how we show up in love. And so our person level is the level that, you know, we're concerned with being and how we show up in the world. And so the way that we take care of our animal and mammal and primate like needs are really important when it comes to our capacity to love. So I think our physiology, our other levels of being are really important, but we are persons. You know, we're not just animals, we're not just mammals, we are persons. And so we have the capacity to self-transcend, to transcend our animal, you know, to control our nervous system. We have ways that we can do that. I deal with this like very strongly. Have PDA autism, which is a nervous system disorder, basically. So my nervous system and taking care of my nervous system is one of the main ways that I love the people in my life, because if I get triggered, I'm incapable of making those loving connections, and that, you know, shows up in how I show up in the world. So I'm a person, so I can control those things. I have agency. I can go to therapy. I can introspect. You know, that's why I believe in love, and that's the realm in which love exists to me, is the person level. Yes, our physiology comes into play, but it's about how we manage that.
I was going to jump off of that with Harmony saying love is a process. I made a video about developing the capacity to love, because when I think back to my childhood and even teenagehood, I think that if maybe, I don't know, but this is how I remember it. I almost feel that the way that I loved back then is the way that my cat loves me. And my cat does not love me unconditionally. He loves me because I give him food, snuggles, resources. And that's kind of the love that children have for their parents, right? Which is developmentally appropriate, right? They're still learning. And so I think as we grow, we start to hopefully, I think, develop that capacity and that skill and to have that self-sacrificing love that Harmony was talking about. I don't think that I possessed that skill as a child. I think children who do have that skill very early on were probably in a dysfunctional home, who had to like take care of their younger siblings, you know, were parentified. And so I think like as we grow, we are also developing that capacity. I don't know if that's psychologically accurate, but that's how, when I think back on my childhood, how I feel. Like I also think that this is kind of a separate discussion, but why immaturity in like a grown adult is almost seen as evil when you have that childlike provide for me, everybody, that like entitlement, right? That developmentally children should have so that they get provided for, but that adults shouldn't. And so that's when it becomes like immaturity as not evil, but as like, looking at you a little funny. So hopefully we develop that capacity, and if we don't, then that becomes, I think, a bit of an issue.
Okay, so to be clear, that's your relationship with unconditional love.
Oh, that was a separate. Okay.
I want to know that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
like,
I think I developed it. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. My relationship to
Okay.
it is that I think I developed the capacity to have unconditional
Mm.
love, whereas I don't think I had that in the past as a child. So I think
Okay.
you grow into it. Yes.
Interesting. Okay,
Brought
I'm
it
gonna
back.
okay, now I'm gonna sound like more woo than all of you, okay? Because like I'll describe my relationship with what I think is unconditional love, and then you got to tell me like how neurodivergent it is, or like how theater kid it is, because now I don't even know. But
Well, that's mine is a separate answer to that too. But I was answering the
okay,
physiology question
then I want to
before.
know that too.
So
You go. Do you want to
okay,
go
yeah.
first, and then I can I'll answer mine.
Yeah, sure,
Go.
sure. So, okay, I think that, okay, on one hand, I don't believe in unconditional love when it comes to like, very purely like materialistic, like concrete, real things like science can't measure, like unconditional love, da 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 da. But on the other hand, I do believe that it's like maybe the most real thing in the world as when it comes to like humans. I think that it's kind of like it's something that we have an imaginal relationship with. So like when think of like a little kid when they're playing pretend, and they like have the superhero mask on and the cape, like they're like not just like putting they're like really participating in a very real way in like what it is like to be that hero. And so like to me that's the relationship that I have with love. It's like I make it real based on the aspiration towards this greater thing that I have, because I see in myself the capacity, how easy it is to not love, to not choose for love, to get out of that process. So I take on an imaginal kind of relationship with the concept of unconditional love, using like sages, like Jesus is a good example of that, and other people, for like really what does it mean to have unconditional love, that I participate in that because I see how easy it is for me to fail, and because I do fail. So like I think I want to be careful when I talk about it because I believe in it, but it's something I aspire towards, and it's a process I enter into. It's not just this thing that I can grasp and achieve.
Okay.
Okay.
Go, Genevieve. Go. Do you want to have a thought?
No. I was just digesting what she
Okay.
was saying.
Okay, I'm gonna say mine this way, but it's gonna sound confusing because if you've watched my other work, it might sound like I'm talking about the same thing. But in particular, and specifically, I do have this inner circle, inner outer circle, everybody else. But even more than that, realistically, I do unconditionally love like all of my cousins, and there's a lot of them. Okay, so I unconditionally love all of them. I'd visit them all in prison. Like I'm never not going to pretend like I don't know them. Okay, there's not that reality where I'm ashamed that I'm related to somebody who did something really weird with their journey. But to simplify this, I'll keep it into my inner circle, inner outer circle, everybody else. So when I think about unconditional love, I am talking about a perception I am having through my consciousness. It doesn't necessarily require a symbiotic relationship for the person I feel this for. Okay, that comes into play with the relationship I'm having them, not with the love I have for them. So obviously they get a say in how much contact I have with them. But the unconditional love happens like this for me. Because ever since I was little, I feel like I've always felt very connected to everything, like every living little creature, every little like animal I could take care of, every little person that ever felt like I could help them. I was like, okay. And like I would do things for strangers that are just like, sure, why not? But at the same time, inner workings of Brittany's consciousness says that when she interacts with somebody that feels very profound to her, it feels almost like a soulmate. And usually when I meet these people, something inside of me goes like, oh, I think I might know this person for the rest of their life in a very significant way, in a way that makes me want to be symbiotic with them. Sometimes I meet really great people, and if you're like me, I've gone through a lot of friend groups over the years to try to figure out like what was my clique, who were my people. And over the years, I've collected very specific people who've been in my life for 20 years, 15 years, 10 years. And those are the people that have stayed, and those are the people that I felt so profoundly connected to that I call them like my soulmates, my inner circle. Minus my siblings and my parents who I feel connected to, regardless of us being biologically connected. I feel like we've made the decision to invest in these relationships, but also I don't think I could turn it off if I wanted to. I don't think I have that choice. I think it just happened, and it happened in a way that I feel connected to. Some of my siblings don't necessarily feel that way about each other, but I feel that way about all my siblings. Like, they are very important to me. With that said, I know that the last 2 times I met my future inner circle people, I remember one of my friends, I finished a conversation with him and I was like, that human, that consciousness stands out to me. Something is so interesting and like, I want to know this human. And that doesn't mean like the relationship is always on the same page. It doesn't mean the relationship is perfect. It means that I am so connected to this consciousness. I want to know them till they die. And I could feel it versus I meet cool people every day that I'm like, oh, I like them. And I would love to know you. But at the same time, my life wouldn't change significantly if most people left my life. My next inner circle person ended up being the person I married. And I know when I met him, I messaged him and I said, hey, I think you might be one of my next inner circle people or I might marry you. And that was something that he was like, yeah, I think you might be my next best friend or I'm going to marry you. And I was like, cool, let's talk about it. Because I know that this is significantly different versus the other way I make friends. And he has lots of friends and he knows it's different. So we have data to tell us something is different. And it's like, what is this different thing? Well, it kind of sounds like that story they tell you. Oh, you're going to meet the person. It's going to be like, only I have it with friends and with my husband. Now with my other partners, adult partners I've had, I didn't have it with them. I significantly remember looking at them and saying like, something's wrong, right? And they're like, no. And I was like, something's wrong. This doesn't feel or it doesn't even like produce the right amount of joy. Something is wrong with this relationship. And my partners would say like, no, we're in love. I was like, I do feel in love. But I don't think I need to know you for the rest of my life. And there's something about that is very painful for someone to hear, but also like so significant for me that I'm like, don't you see this is why we can't be together? I can tell you we're not going to be happy together. So for me, when I put my foot down about knowing the differences between how I was interacting with people, it led me to like the most healthy, wonderful connections I've ever had. But I know it sounds woo-woo to say like, I'll know when I know, but also I think you'll know with me. I won't be alone in it. We can talk about it. We can have the conversation. You'll agree there's something that makes us want to hang out. So it is symbiotic. You know what I mean? There's something, does that sound really woo-woo? Like a soul?
No,
Okay.
I'd almost think like, for me, well, what I heard you say, and I don't know if this is accurate, so correct me if I'm wrong, but with your family, you didn't choose, right, to be born into that family, but you worked on developing those connections. Whereas when you find someone that really that sees the world in a very similar or the same way you do, that can agree on reality, that can agree on values, although that's not the case with your friends. Yes.
Yeah.
But it's like that something, right?
I think the parts of you, the core parts of you,
yeah.
I think you see just enough of them, but specifically in a specific way. Because lots of my friends see lots of parts of me, but something significantly different, happens. But yeah, it's about seeing, because you know how diversely different my friends are. Like,
Yes.
they're very different from me. We don't see reality the same, but we see something the same enough, or not even the same, just enough.
I like compatible or like attracted, or I'm trying to think of the right word.
It's like a resonance. It's a resonance.
Yeah. I was also wondering if it's like, you're saying it's like a specific part of you that they see, and maybe it's partial, like maybe the core part. Is it like the cores that are connecting? No? That's so interesting.
It can't be, because like it's not our cores. It's like, maybe it's just like the literal soul. Maybe I feel like I see you and I would like this. It's very hard to explain, but like I know for a fact, like I even think of my best friend of like 20 something years. Like we look at each other and we could not have been, like, we made the decision. All of our friend groups around us, of course, outgrew us because we've known each other since we were 9. But we are the ones that have like stayed connected. And I cannot abandon this person. Like, she's my sister. Like, I cannot let her go. But it's insane. But why? Why her? I've known lots of people. By the way, she's not the only person I know I've known for 30 years. I know tons of people I grew up with for 30 years. But she is the one that I'm like, no, this is ride or die, bro. Like, this is like, I will go out of my way for you significantly. But why her? And why
Of
not
the
everyone
part that
else
is
I've
so
known?
tricky to explain, yeah.
There's something, I feels like
There's
a soulmate.
something,
Yeah,
but
it
what is it?
feels
See, to
something.
me, that's why I say resonance, because like resonance in music, two notes that
Yeah,
are different notes, but they hit off of each other in just the right way, that there's this vibration that
yeah.
Mm.
they play off of each other and become something, they make each other more beautiful through being
Mm.
in relationship with each
That
other,
feels
even
like
though they're different.
a
You
great
know
way
what
to
I mean?
describe this.
Yeah.
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 But if it's a different key that's just off just enough, there's a dissonance, and that's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
there's an
Oh,
embodied, and
Yeah.
yeah.
even Brittany, when I see you talking about it, it looks like you have a feeling in your body of how these things that you can't necessarily say, but you just know something's just in it. And to me, that again applies to resonance.
Mm.
There's some kind of physical feeling that you have that you just know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not this solid, oh, I can empirically state this is how I fall in love. It's you just kind of know. It's a
Mm.
vibration thing. And maybe that's why it also sounds woo-woo,
Yeah, if
Mhm.
I can give a visual example, it feels like if I'm looking in a crowd of a million people, they light up in different colors. So most people are gray, but then my inner circle is a bright, bright yellow. I see it louder than everything else. And then my inner outer circle would be a nice soft pink. And then everyone else would be gray. And I'm like, oh, look at this significant group of people. They light up a different color. Where I'm like, oh, I would know my inner circle in a crowd of people. I just wouldn't know them. I would know their
It's
smell and their sound.
synesthesia.
Yeah, I would know everything about. There's no way one of my little brothers could try to hide in a crowd from me, bitch. I would find him by the way his little shadow looks, okay? And so I think there's something there where I'm like, you. So that's why when we talk about friendship and what is friendship and what is connection, my brain starts to get frazzled because it might look like I'm being callous. Oh, you can leave. I love you. Bye. But what I'm saying is I get it. No hard feelings. But then people want you to have hard feelings, I think, because they want to be significant. But how is it not significant that we met on this universe, on this little planet that's floating through
Right. It's
space?
still significant. It's
How is it not
incredibly
still significant, right? Yeah.
I do
Arena.
wonder if this resonance that you are feeling, right, with people who, don't share values, but there's that something. I wonder if that is another unique feature that you hold, right? Because I can't quite relate to that, but I wonder if the people who do relate to that, if they can also explain what it is that draws them, right? I don't think everybody can hold those resonant relationships. Maybe other people like more harmonious relationships, if we want to talk music wise. Maybe they want to have relationships that are, same melody, different key kind of relationships, but not necessarily resonant, right? I
Yeah.
wonder if that's also something to consider is how do you bring relationships into your life? Do you need that harmony, or do you also look for that resonance?
That's a good question, actually. Because, yeah, I will say it is obviously unique to me enough. My category of person. I would not say Brittany, the singular person. I would say the people who are like me. It does seem unique for this category to have friends who have incredibly diverse opinions about the world. Or even even when I fight with them, I'm like, cool, bro, love you. Call me when you're ready, bro. And everyone's just like, and I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care how much you fight with me. I don't care how much we go without talking. I don't care if it's been 10 years, girl. I'm not going to block you. I'm going to answer your calls. Versus when I broke up with ex-boyfriends and they try to contact me, girl, I change my number. I get a new voicemail. I make it. They can't contact me no matter how hard they try. Okay? No matter how hard they try, you can't contact me. But my inner circle, I would never block you. I would never try to avoid you. You know what I mean? I'm here. That's the whole point. Is you're so special to me that you get treated specifically because it means something so special. But then I don't want it to be because I love you, I do these things for you. Because I would do things that I do for my inner circle for strangers. See? And that's where it gets confusing. That's
I
where it
see
gets
what you
confusing.
mean, though, because I feel like you and I have a similar experience of it where it is hard to explain. You just have this connection or love for certain people. And it doesn't really matter how often you talk to them or if they do something bad or whatever. My best friend in my 20s, she and I lived in San Francisco together. We did so much growing and exploring and discovering of ourselves together. Absolutely love this woman with all my heart. About when we reached our 30s, she and her partner moved to Berlin.
Mm.
And I moved out of San Francisco and met my partner, and we just kind of lost contact, not for any specific reason. Even though we hadn't been speaking, though, I know she still loves me and I
Mhm.
still love her. And last week, she messaged me and we just like picked up like it hadn't been all this time. And it was so awesome. Like, no explanation needed
Mhm.
for like, oh, like, why didn't you hit me up sooner or anything like that? Just immediately right back into how we were before.
Yeah.
And just, I would still do anything for her right now if
Mm.
that were something that were needed. And I feel that that's equal. Although that's not a requirement for unconditional love, in my opinion. I
Right.
know that I could love someone unconditionally, whether or not they felt the same about me. But I
Yeah.
think that it transcends time and time spent together, even.
Okay, see, and then there's people I meet. Okay, so I feel the same way. And then there's people I meet where I call them like everybody else. No offense. This isn't meant to be like I know people want to get their feelings hurt, but you can't. I refuse to allow you. Okay? Like it just doesn't make sense. But like there are people who want to be in my inner outer circle where like I would care for you eventually, like if you cut me off and I'm like, oh my God, wait, what happened? Whoa, what happened? Even if we haven't talked, what happened? But then there are the other people that like if they cut it off with me, I'd be like, okay. And I don't mean that to be offensive. I mean, I respect your agency so much. I'm going to let you leave. I think I respect my inner circle a little less where I'm like, where are you going? Where are you going? Not literally, but a part of me is like, hey, 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 where are you going? I love you. Let me express that to you. So you
Yeah.
know you are not like these people, I want them to go on a journey. My inner circle, I want them to know to always call me, but I'm going to erase eventually, and like everyone else, I will erase your phone number from my phone. You know what I'm saying? Like we all meet so many
Yeah.
people. Like some people can't stay in your phone book. Okay? But the people that stay in my phone book, like I think pretty significantly of those people. You know what I mean? Even if I don't like call you at 2 a.m., I still think of you fondly. I have so many old friends I've had for 10, 15 years that are an inner circle, but I love them so immensely. They're so beautiful as people, but I can't make the same effort for them. But at the same time, like if it was an emergency, I would. You know what I mean? It's very nuanced. But the
Mhm.
difference between that and that is like this thin, nuanced little line that's barely like noticeable, but it's in the symbiotic way. Like I'm able to talk to my inner circle in a very specific way. And yet, not everyone in my inner circle can see me fully. So I can't have the same conversations with everybody. I can't be completely vulnerable with everyone in my inner circle, but I can be so vulnerable with the people in my inner circle. It is unlike any other experience outside of that. You know, like the vulnerability of when like somebody leaves, you shut the door and you're like, oh my God. Like totally unmasked, like feelings in your like, but yet you're not being your complete vulnerable individual consciousness. You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm like explaining? Yes, Arena. Okay, I see you nodding. Okay, okay.
I think so.
It's like the difference between like you and your sister are talking and then your brother comes in the room and it's like you can still keep talking, but maybe you shift the
Yeah.
language. It's like, but it's still I'm most vulnerable with my inner circle, generally speaking, even if they can't see every part of me. Right? Like none of my siblings have seen my lover side. Thank God. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. I see that. I see what you're saying there.
I relate in that I don't experience relationship or friendship decay. Like, literally, my
Mm.
friends can just not speak to me.
Mm.
But the way that I differ is that most of my relationships, we do share values and like perspectives. And so that's like what I'm noticing is the difference. But I wonder, like, for the people who need everybody like to be birds of a feather flock together, but they also need that constant, interaction to maintain relationships. And I wonder if maybe that's also, I don't know if it's immature, because when you're like an adult, you're busy, you're traveling, you don't have time to go get brunch with the girlies every Wednesday. You don't have time to meet up with this person, this person, this person, and this person. And so you hope, I think, that the people around you realize that that is the case and don't take like long stretches of not talking personally. But I do
Mm.
wonder, like, if any of you have an experience with an adult in your adult life who like needs that constant interaction in order to maintain friendships and relationships, And then the next question is, how do they do it? Like, who has the time?
Yeah, I would say
I
if they're
can't.
go ahead, Genevieve. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I can't relate to that because that just doesn't. I don't have the capacity to give somebody my attention all the time and to constantly be reassuring them all the time. So for me, that wouldn't be a sustainable relationship.
I would say that if one of my friends was expressing that, I would tell them to go to therapy. Right? Like in the most like loving way. I love you so much, but if you don't recognize that people are busy, that's a therapy issue about abandonment or something. And yet at the same time, I do raise an eyebrow at people who like when you're visiting from out of town and you don't live in that state and you're like, "Hey, I'm in town for a week. When can I see you?" "I'm busy with the kids. I'm busy with my life." Okay, that feels like you don't really want to see me cuz like
Yeah,
you know what I'm
yeah.
saying? But
It's
if
like an
you
exception as far as this opportunity
exactly.
is being presented.
Mhm.
So you would have somewhat of a different expectation versus like
Exactly.
we live in the same town all the time. We're
Exactly.
always doing our routine, this, that, and
Mhm.
the other. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, we could make time to see each other this week, but we also could do it next week and
Yes.
it's fine.
Or even in a
Versus
few
if you're
months
all,
from now. Like time goes
yeah,
by
like,
so quick as an adult. Like I'll see you in 3 months. I love you.
yeah, yeah, like there's not,
Mhm.
we can do it at whenever versus if you are visiting from out of state or out of the country or whatever, and there's only a very specific window. That's different.
Okay, because that's what I see the biggest like I'm in my hustle era for the next 2 years, thank you. And it's really important to me that all my friends understand it's not that and I'm not gonna lie, I use YouTube half the time to talk to my friends because they watch my streams and I'm like, hey, if you're listening to this, I love you. I can't, I'm so busy. I'm not going to have enough downtime to think I should call so and so. I'm only having enough downtime to think, like, how do I make myself food and film and edit and then go to bed and exercise? And it's not because I'm rejecting anyone. It's because I literally don't. But if anyone wants to call me and says, like, hey, can you make time for me next month? Like, yeah, let's just schedule in a date. No problem. Or maybe I'll push you to here. But I'm not, it's weird when you're an adult living your own life. But then it's also weird when people are also used to like oh my god, COVID radically challenged a lot of my friendships in a good and bad way. Good way mostly, where I had so much more free time during COVID. I wasn't in a hustle era. I wasn't sick yet. I wasn't doing any of those things. So at the beginning of COVID, I would talk to people for like 5-6 hours a day. The
Yeah.
idea of even doing 10 minutes right now, I'm like, do you know what I'm saying? And I don't think people have recovered from COVID. Like, at least in my life, there's been some like tension where I've had to like calm everyone down and be like, hey, just a reminder, we're not in COVID era anymore. I do not have this time, even if you still do. I do not
Mhm.
have it anymore. And I do think some of those things need to be said out loud. Like, I don't know if everyone's recovered from having a lot of downtime.
I think that's a really good point because I know for sure that I invested a lot more time just talking to people, messaging them, like, what else was I doing? Not
Mm,
much. But
yeah.
yeah, I'm back in a routine. I have a lot going on. Um, my inner circle, my very, very close friends, family members, et cetera, they can reach out at any point and there's no love lost, like the example that I was giving with my friend Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
And I just she was having her grand adventure and I was having mine and we were just going about this our lives, right? But we still are able to reconnect at any point, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
I was gonna say with the example of somebody visiting from out of country or out of state, that if they've were like, hey, I'm coming over next month, right? That gives you time to prepare. And so hopefully then you're not saying, oh, I'm so busy, blah, blah, blah. But then if somebody is like, hey, I just landed, I'm coming over with my bags, I feel like that, I have very few people in my life who can do that, right? Like basically only
Yeah.
direct family and like my inner circle. But I think like in adult relationships, you really got to be considerate of
For sure, for sure.
people's
But the people that I
schedules.
do feel unconditional love for, they could literally show up on my door right now, like not even tell me I'm in Las Vegas. Just, hey, and I would be like, oh my God, come in. I
Right.
love you, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Do you guys I saw a chatter say, do people take for granted having these relationships with people? Do you think that we're taking for granted our relationships with people by having boundaries, I guess? How would you take advantage of the situation? I think is more At least how I would see that question. Because I do think people who don't have friends or family or close people see us talking about needing space from our friends as sort of like a brag, maybe, or maybe like taking it for granted. What do you guys think about that?
Sure. That's an interesting thought. I don't know if it's so much taking it for granted as just being very secure in it. But
Ding, ding,
is
ding.
that, yeah, like that feels different to me.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to think how to put that into a better explanation. But that's kind of all I have right now.
I
Just,
agree
it
with you. I
feels,
think it's that. Yeah. Thoughts on that?
ladies.
I guess I'm not really clear on the exact question.
Like, some people who don't have close friends or family, or people who've never had a girlfriend, or people who've never had this will look at us and say like, ugh, look at you not needing more friends, or look at you deciding who's like good enough to be in your inner circle, or look at you. So how do you explain to them? It's not about taking them for granted. I think Genevieve said it best. It's like I have such a secure attachment to them that I trust them to go months without speaking to me and knowing that it means nothing except I love you, I'm busy. When it's time, we'll connect again. But with other people, it might feel like with especially new friends in my life, I'm like, okay, what's happening? Like, what's our relationship?
Yeah.
You know? And then I'm like, okay, I'll just let it go. But if a new person came into my life and didn't talk to me for 6 months, I'd be like, oh, they moved on.
Exactly.
I
Or
would
like,
think that, you
okay.
know? Oh, yeah, super
I
casual,
see.
or like it's super, super
Mhm.
casual, you know, something like that. So
Yeah.
how do you know in your own life, or have you ever had an inner circle person feel like you're not giving them enough time?
That's really interesting. I haven't, but I do wonder like what it would look like for me if an inner circle person did feel like I wasn't giving them enough time, right? And then the taking for granted, I couldn't agree more with Genevieve. I feel like this secure attachment to relationships is something that I've worked on actively. It's something that I've built up. Um, and I've been working on being selective with my energy. I just find that certain people drain me, and so I have to be very selective with how and when I hang out with them. Um, but it's something that I've worked on since childhood, right? Like that's just something I've practiced with childhood friends and throughout high school and college, and the way I've operated, I think, has had like kind of a consistent tone to it. I do think that, at least in my case, I had a huge advantage of being brought up in a very family oriented way. And I think that's another thing that we all do have in common is that we are connected to our families, even if we don't
True.
share values with our families, but we grew up in we didn't grow up in homes where we didn't feel loved by our parents necessarily, right? Like we felt loved even if we didn't like always experience the best things, but we always knew that there's like you could go back to your parents,
We
right?
had
And like
at
you
least a
have that.
small like model of what love was. Yeah.
Mm.
Ye-
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's important actually. I think
Yeah.
that's really important when it comes to love. Yeah, like having that mm, and then it also like adds to the meaning of like what it means to love someone when you see how important it is, especially if you take the example of like a parent for their child, because I think children who are, more well loved by their parents in a more healthy way that don't have trauma, or have less trauma. I think everyone has trauma, but I think they are better able to do things like manage their nervous system, and they develop things like secure attachments, and it turns them into the type of person that makes them mm, maybe more likely to get into the flow of that unconditional love, and then have that love for themselves because they can form a good, strong, solid self concept because of the love that was given to them, all the time and attention and care that was put into like making this little primate animal mammal thing into an actual person. I think that's love. Actually, I do think that love is like essentially one of the things that separates us from the monkeys. But
Mm.
but yeah, so it turns the love literally turns us into like a person, and then we take that and we have that love for ourselves, and then coming from that like ownership of yourself, then we can give unconditional love away. And I think people who have a lesser access to that kind of love struggle harder with that. And if I am honest, like I do love my parents, and they're, they are. I'm very lucky in a lot of ways, but I also like my family. They are my inner circle, but they don't see me fully. You know what I mean? They don't want to see me fully because I'm a sex worker and they're conservative and like ideology and blah 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 blah. But and I don't have a lot of like close friends, but I do have like online friends who like maybe probably the autistic thing, being able to like type it out and think about things really helps the friendships I form online have that element of like really being able to see me. But I still have unconditional love for my parents and my family, even though they can't see me. But I think that's why I was struggling with like trying to really understand what you're talking about, because I'm like, oh, like I don't know if I have that really as in the same way,
Mm.
those friends like too much. I'm almost like I'm looking for little openings to love everywhere that I can, because I'm like obsessed with love, but I struggle. I struggle socially. So
Mm-hmm.
I do
yeah.
wonder if there's an example of someone who maybe had to learn how to love and how to hold relationships not from their parents but from scratch, and they've
Yeah.
succeeded. I would be curious about that story because I
There
don't
is.
think
It's not
Yeah.
hopeless. I don't mean that to say it's
Yeah.
hopeless for people,
Yeah,
because I
I
think
just can't
love,
access like what to
yes,
do in that
yeah,
situation. I
love is a
wouldn't know.
pattern, and it's like just the tiniest speck can snowball. It's a sticky pattern, right? So just a teeny tiny bit, I think, can open you up, and just once that like little crack gets open, then the water can get in and split the rock in
Yeah.
half. Sorry, I'm
I
mixing
think
all
that
my
love
metaphors.
creates love creates more love.
Mhm.
Mm. I feel like I will say if anytime obviously okay. I'm like medium dysfunctional. That's what I call it, okay? I call it medium dysfunctional upbringing, okay? So it was like it wasn't CPS worthy, but it wasn't like without raising an eyebrow. Okay? Like I had a family, people raised a lot of eyebrows out. So I would say medium dysfunctional, right? Nobody called the cops, but everyone kind of went, that's interesting. And I was like, okay. And kind of dismissed it as like the foreign family, okay? So when I think about the dysfunction I was raised in and how I remember having moments in my life where I was like, I hate my fucking family. I hate my parents. I hope they all fucking die. I don't even care if they die. I'm so heartless. I don't even talk to these bitches anymore. Like I don't even need them. And all along, my consciousness was screaming for them to see me. I just wanted them to see me the way that I felt about them. And it took lots of therapy and lots of years for all of us to eventually make an effort to heal some of those generational curses that I think a lot of us are born into. And for our level of dysfunction, I think we got much healthier as we aged. But it's so, like, since they are very conservative, much like Harmony's family, and they are very strong. Like, if you guys think I'm strong with my values, you should meet my mother. Okay, like she is like me but times 100 in energy. And so like when we're talking about like holding to your values, it's very difficult. Though I will say my family was the kind of family that would play a big game. Like if we have queer kids, like I don't want to see them, they're not allowed at home, I don't want to know about it. But then like 3 of their kids are queer and we come home all the time. So it's like one of those things, but like they're not going to meet our partners. And I'm like, fine, deal. They didn't come to my wedding. It wasn't Catholic wedding. Fine, deal. Like they're very good about sticking to their values, but also learning to love you. I think I learned unconditional love from my parents because they have it for me. And it took me a really long time to realize that's what it was. Because truly, every time they did anything to me that I thought was dysfunctional, I know it was well-intentioned, which is really difficult to process. I wasn't in the kind of dysfunctional home where parents did things for the fun of it. They literally had a reason, or they were taught how to do it, or it was part of their religion, or somebody else told them this is how you do it. And they thought, okay, cool, I'm doing the good thing. I'm doing the thing I'm supposed to as a parent. I was never raised in a home where my parents didn't brag about what they did to us because other parents agreed with them. This is reasonable. This is what parents do. So it wasn't like, even though people raised an eyebrow, it was usually from people who came from less dysfunctional homes. So medium dysfunction is like being looked at by people with like even less dysfunction. And they're like, oh, maybe not that, but they were more liberal homes. So growing up, the more liberal homes I saw had less dysfunction generally than the conservative homes. And they still had unconditional love in those homes, but yet the vulnerability in which they expressed that unconditional love was very different. I noticed in the liberal homes around me, very upstanding Democrat kind of homes, very like prim and proper, working mothers, working fathers, they had those bubbles, a much harder time expressing love than the family that was yelling on the top of their lungs, I love you. Why can't you see that I love you? And like my parents would say, Betty, can't you see that I love you? And I'm like, you're driving me crazy. Just let people be gay. And then I would like run out of the house and slam the door and drive off. And like what I was learning over the years was like the level of dysfunction was also a lack of education and knowledge, but the love was so obviously there. I love you. Can't you see that I love you? And I'm like, can't you see your religion is hurting people? But no, because for them, it was their key to their joy. And for me, my freedom was the key to mine, but the love was still there regardless. And I think that's really hard to process because I think other people around the world are, like Arena said, are more than happy to cut off ties with people that think so differently from them. But I couldn't imagine that being the reason I cut them off because I know that deep down the people that they're the kind of people that would give you their clothes off their back. They would absolutely, they've seen them do it. I've seen my parents do the most random acts of kindness, and I'm sitting there and looking at them and I'm like, okay, these are good people. They're just different than me. So I know when I form unconditional love, it is about the actual consciousness, not who they vote for, not how they see the world, not their weird mistakes, but literally the goodness, the wholesomeness, like the goodness of them is so gross. It makes me want to vomit, but also I love it so much. And at the same time, even though they're so good, they have done so much damage, you know?
Mhm.
And I am one of them. I am them as well. Like I'm definitely someone who has caused enough damage in people's lives to know my good intentions are absolutely like paving the road to hell. And I know that. I know they're paving the road to hell. So again, it's about that realization that allows me to think, how could I lose my love for them even though, you know?
I think that's the unconditional aspect of it. It's like the willingness to engage even through the hurt and the trauma. You know what I mean? Because every person that I talk to about unconditional love, like it seems like that like pushing through the trauma is like a very important part. Like we really like I who said it that love is the horizon of the horror, right?
Ooh.
Because we
Oh,
really yeah, isn't that deep?
yeah.
Because when we love somebody, we are so able to be hurt by them. And then that's even what I think about when I think of like really dysfunctional families where maybe there's less access to love. You know, I hate to use those terms, but like for lack of a better way to say it, you know, like that's what I think of. Like all that hurt is so magnified because they're supposed to love you and you're vulnerable and you're opening yourself up to this point that they have that much power over you.
Mm.
Is why to me love is so sacred because like it's that big of a deal. You know what I mean? To
Mhm.
like live up to it and we fail and when we fail like we commit ourselves to like aiding in the healing because it's like that I don't know precious or something that important that sacred, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you wouldn't, I wouldn't subject myself to potential trauma or hurt or any of those uncomfortable negative feelings if the love weren't there. And I said earlier, I feel like I can't choose who I love unconditionally. I just have this connection to them, right? That's sort of unexplainable. But for whatever reason, even if they do something that does cross a boundary or hurt me, I still feel so much love for them that I want to find a way to work through that, work past it. Um,
It's almost like
just
there's
find
like
like
a
a
sorry, I'm so sorry.
no,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was just riffing off of that. It's almost like there's a trust in them that even when they hurt you, like you trust their reasons for it. Like there has to
Mm.
be a reason. Like there's some, you know, like you're able to like set aside that like wounded ego part of yourself
Mhm.
and then like seek to have compassion for them in their mistreatment of you, you
Mhm.
know?
Right, right. Like
Yeah.
I'm able to think of being in their shoes almost, or
Yeah.
like okay, well, maybe they had their reason, like, whatever. I'm more understanding of it versus somebody that I don't have unconditional love for. I'd be like, okay, bye.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say,
exactly.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
I
Arena.
No,
was
I was
gonna
just
say,
agreeing.
I wonder if that, because I was thinking about what Brittany said about like the upstanding Democrat families, versus like that medium dysfunction, right? I'd say I grew up in a medium dysfunction home, like lower income, definitely got slapped and yelled at and all that stuff. But I do wonder if that medium dysfunction is what tests the love. And when you don't have that test, because what I notice it when I think about like those, like the upstanding, upper middle class, Democrat, liberal kind of homes, is it's almost like there's nothing to rebel against. There's nothing to test your love because they're doing everything right, or almost everything, or maybe what they're not doing right is not like intellectually challenging their children. Because my mom and I would argue a lot when I was like 11, 12, like up until I was like 18. And she later told me like I would debate with you on purpose. And I don't know how true that is, but she would literally be like, I was literally being contrarian to like stimulate your brain to like test you. And like I'm like, oh, interesting. Like I don't know if that's actually true or if she was actually arguing with a 15-year-old, who knows, maybe both. But I do think that it benefited me in my communication, and it was like a safe place because I knew no matter what, my mom loves me, right? Like even if we're like screaming passionately at each other, it's like a safe place to develop that conversational skill, that assertiveness, etc. Whereas if your parents never kind of intellectually challenge you, then I think that's like a different form of dysfunction that you're going to have to deal with, even though on paper your life maybe was better.
I definitely think conflict probably helps. And okay, I will say we had conflict and a safety net at the same time. So like my parents have an open door policy with all of their children to this day. Like to this day, I could come to my parents' house in middle of the night and sneak in, and they literally would be like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you're here." Like if they woke up in the morning and saw us, they would just think it was so funny and like, "Oh, how sweet." Like even if I came right now from Croatia, if I flew over, did not tell them, showed up, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh." Like they would just be so happy. Versus I mean, not everybody has that relationship with their parents. Not every parent's excited to see my parents have always made it clear to us they're excited to see us. And I think even though we fight, even though it's like, get out of my house when you turn 18. How dare you rebel? It's also like, come over Sunday. We're having barbecue. And I was and like, I remember when I went to therapy and I started to rebuild with my parents, I started with my mother because my dad's more easy and my mom's harder. And so I started with the harder one. And my mom was like, we got into an argument, which was like pretty normal for us. And I was like, I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. And she goes, why are you coming over tomorrow? I was like, because we already plans to see each other tomorrow. And she goes, even though we just fought? And I was like, yes, I've gone to therapy. The new me is coming over tomorrow. And she was like, ugh, therapy. And then I came over the next day. She goes, oh, you really showed up. And I was like, oh, I told you. I went to therapy. And like, she's right. The old me would have stayed away for 5 to 10 days, would have ignored all her messages, and would have been like, I'm going to punish you. And I don't punish people no more. I don't punish people. I punish people out of trauma. I do not punish people anymore. But I will tell you this. Sometimes having boundaries feels like punishment. And that's
True.
when inner circle and their demands for your time become about their trauma. Because like you've made me need to evoke a boundary. Why? What happened? How could we have gone from such intimacy, from such closeness, from such conflict, and now I need to evoke one of my boundaries? What happened? Why are we doing this? And then if they can have the conversation, great. But if they're not ready, that's why I say, like, I'm willing to sit. I'll wait for you 5-10 years. You need to go through a moment. Girl, I'm waiting for you. Cool. But that's where even within our circle, I have to keep my boundaries. Because sometimes the people in our life are so individual and so unique. Sometimes they're going on a path that's like so destructive. You're like, hope you make it out, bro. Good luck. If you need me, call me.
Hope to
But
see you on the other side.
yeah, hope to see you on the other side. Which I think contradicts the illusion people have around inner circle, which is ride or die, which is if you I would bury a body for you. I was like, oh, really? You'd bury a body for someone? Has anyone seen a dead body? All these people that talk a big game about burying bodies for their friends, have you even seen a dead body? please, okay? You're not going to bury a body for someone. And if you do, you need to ask yourself why you're willing to hide a murder. Like, you need to ask yourself, what are you doing? And who did they
I
murder?
know.
I will bury a mouse body for my cat.
There we
I
go.
will do that.
There we go.
Yeah.
I feel like
Handle that.
boundaries are the hard work of love, you know? That's like
Yeah.
literally what affords love between two subjective experiences, right? Like you have to have boundaries to make it work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
What do you guys think about that, though? There is this toxic, I would say more dysfunctional level where it's like, this is normal. This is what's normal. Like, I hit you, I bruise you, I hit our kids in a way that's like definitely CPS worthy. I do a lot of things that are, and then this is just love. This is what love
That's
is.
not love.
Yeah. So
That's a
No.
How do you-
complete misunderstanding.
Harmony
That's
then?
attachment.
So
That's attachment to your ego.
okay, explain
That's a
the
wounded
difference.
ego.
Explain
Yeah,
the difference
that-
between the conflict that's bad and the conflict that's good.
Yeah.
Then
Okay, so the conflict that's bad and the conflict that's good.
which is the one you're supposed to have to grow, and which is the one you're having, and you should end the end the.
Oh, okay. One doesn't have boundaries.
Oh,
And one has boundaries. That's why boundaries are what makes it actually love, because you're doing the hard work instead of like harming each other continuously. You're saying, no, I'm going to take responsibility of myself. I'm going to take agency in this relationship and do what I need to do to maintain myself so that I can do the person work of being able to transcend my nervous system and my attachment wounds so that I can step outside of my ego when we're fighting and put the compassionate lens on and try to look from your point of view so that we can actually get somewhere and not just be wounded in conflict.
Okay, question.
And-
Go ahead,
Oh,
Arena.
yeah.
Go. You go.
I was gonna say to the this toxicity is normal. It's normal to like scream at each other. It's normal to call names. It's normal to fight, like in the actual sense. I think like anyway, yeah, that's another thing that I'm grateful to my mother for. Like the more I like introspect on my childhood, the more grateful I am for how I was raised, because anytime there was a toxic relationship on TV, my mom would be like, that's not normal. Or in reality TV, if she would see people like screaming at each other, she's like, that's not normal. That's not good. That's not a good relationship.
Same.
And
My
like
mom would.
that stuck with
yeah.
me.
No, my mom wouldn't
Yeah.
even let me watch certain shows because she's like, no, this level of dysfunction, I don't want you to learn this. This is not what healthy families act like. So I wasn't allowed to watch certain things growing up, which is interesting.
Yeah, same. Simpsons.
Yeah, I wasn't
Hell.
allowed to watch The Simpsons,
Yeah.
which is pretty funny.
Even Disney, because like they made the dads like look stupid.
My parents would
Yeah.
comment on that all the time. Oh, why did they kill the moms off? And why are the dads dumb? And like, why did they? So my parents, again, we're talkers. We're all opinionated talkers. And the kids are asked questions growing up. Like, what do you think about this? Like, we want to hear your thoughts, which as a child gave me an advantage over other kids who grew up in homes of like, kids are meant to be seen, not heard. I couldn't even imagine growing up in that kind of environment. Very different.
Yeah, same.
Oh, boundaries. Okay, just for the sake of this panel out loud, because I've seen other panelists in my circles say that, everyone has a different definition of boundaries, but I think boundaries and ultimatums are different. Boundaries are for you, ultimatums are for other people. So I rarely and almost never give ultimatums. I feel like they're not very helpful. I feel like boundaries work better for me because, again, I don't really care what people do. I care how I'm involved in it. Like so when I think of a boundary, I think of like, you can go ahead and keep doing you. I'm not asking you to stop. I'm just going to remove myself because that's my freedom. Versus,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people on the internet or around sometimes use boundaries like ultimatums, but boundaries are not ultimatums, like to be clear. So I just wanted to say that out loud. Does anyone have anything to say on that?
Yeah, like there's like a fine line between like people can very easily, like a very skilled manipulator can very easily turn what sounds like boundaries into manipulation, and that's not
Yes.
actual boundaries. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I think
I
a
won-
boundary is very much like, I'm so sorry, very much just what like you're choosing to participate in. Like this
Yeah.
is like a boundary that
It's
like
you
a dog in a
taking
yard
personal
or like an animal,
responsibility.
right? Like I'm not gonna go there. Like that's my
Yeah.
boundary.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I wonder, so boundary versus ultimatum. What about like the ultimatum show, right? That's like a great example of an ultimatum. Like, I want to get married by such and such
Oh
time.
yeah, okay.
How do you, I mean, in a healthy relationship, you negotiate that prior to the relationship. But let's say you were lied to, or like, then I guess you end the relationship. Never mind. I answered my own question. Boundary versus ultimatum. Yeah, there's a difference. Even if
You
like, your
either
boundary is
end the
you want to get
relationship
married.
or you radically accept that how you like the relationship is right
Mhm.
now could be how it is forever. Either
Right.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So everyone in my inner circle can basically, like Genevieve said, like come over unannounced for the most part. Now that I'm married, I try to take my husband's consent into
Yeah.
account because it's not quite the same for him. He doesn't know my family that way in the same way. Or like I love that my in-laws always call and they're very respectful of our distance and our space. To be fair, they also know what I do for a living, and so I'm sure they don't want to accidentally walk in while I'm doing an OF shoot or something. So they're very like respectful of boundaries or whatever, our time. But I will say there's even somebody in my inner circle, love them to bits and pieces, but they actually cannot just come over whenever they want. Because even within an inner circle, I'll talk about complicated inner circle relationships. I love this person more than most people on this planet. Literally love this person better than 7 billion point whatever billion people on this planet. And they still can't just come over because their mental health and their status lends their interaction with you to be possibly threatening. And so it's one of those things where like, but I still love this person and I will always be
Yeah.
available to them and I will always love them. But even with that person, I have to have a very strong boundary with, which is like, you can call and text. You can do a lot of things. I have a tolerance for how long you're allowed to talk to me before it becomes abusive because they have a tendency to basically start off very nice and swing right into abusive language. And so it's very like, and I love this person again. And I understand that from anyone else, I could just cut that person off and block them and that would be the end. But because they're inner circle, because their consciousness is someone that I've had a relationship with so long, I look at them and I don't just know them as the person they are now. I know them for the person they were. I knew them when they were a child. I knew them when they were a teenager. I knew them I saw them go through their whole life. I can't just cut that person out because they're abusive. But what I can do is put a strong boundary down with myself, which is say, you keep doing you. I love you. I'll come back and see you when you're done ranting. Or, hey, I'm going to block you for the next 10 minutes so I don't get your text messages, but then I'm going to unblock you and I'll talk to you again in 10 minutes. And it's something that I had to radically accept, that this person is not ready to make a change, but this person is still a consciousness that just is so bright to me in the whole universe. I could never imagine not knowing them, and I would still want to know them more than I would ever want to know anybody else. And so there's something so significant to me about that because I understand that I have been in like romantic relationships with people for 2, 5, whatever years, and those are people that I'm like, block, never need to see them again. Because the person I am doesn't have a connection to them. Even though I loved their consciousness at the time, this person doesn't have a connection to them anymore. And it's such a strange, I think, phenomenon to explain to people who are very, I don't want to use this word, but I think it's the proper one. What's this called? What's this called?
Transactional.
Yes, thank you, Harmony. Yes, transactional. So then what is the difference between transactional and unconditional love with conditions? And what's the difference from conditions and transactions?
That's a really, really, really good question. I think transactional love feels very attached to the ego to me, and that doesn't actually feel like love to me. Yeah, it's not love.
It's just
It's
an
a transaction.
exchange. Yeah.
An exchange with some ego rubbing that feels really nice, and so we take that nice feeling to mean like, oh, I like that. I like it when that person makes me feel that way, so that must be love, right? Because I really, really like it. That's just attachment to your ego, right? Boundaries
Yeah.
actually, to me, they take work. Like when you actually have boundary that shows that you love somebody enough to like put this boundary in place so that the relationship can work. You know,
Right. So it can
it's easier
continue.
it's easier just to like close the door on the relationship, right? To me, it is at least than to put up a boundary. The boundary is the sacrifice, you know, and that's why it's different. It's not
Absolutely.
saying, oh, tit for tat, blah, 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 but it's also like maybe not to be like superior or anything, but it might even be like giving an example of like, this is how you love somebody to somebody who's maybe not like, maybe someone who's in their nervous system, someone who's in their attachment wound, whatever, you know what I mean? Like you can understand, okay, I know how we are basically like put together, or at least I have this narrative of how humans are put together that helps me understand what you're going through to such a degree that I can like accept your behavior, understand you, and like still love you through that because I know what it's like to be a human. And I'm also going to put a boundary so that you can like, I don't know, that's loving myself. It's loving you. It's
Mhm.
maybe being that little tiny speck of love that can snowball into something bigger, hopefully
Mhm.
creating a way for more, you know, interaction and love in the future.
I wonder, so for me, when I thought transactional, I immediately thought temporary and not like
Mm.
it's
Yep.
it's once the transaction's over, I'm not thinking about you. Like we did what we needed to do, boom, done. Where
Yeah.
Yeah.
conditions, it's almost like, oh, there's something here. Let's see what conditions we can create for our relationship to
Ooh,
thrive.
yes. Well, I
Mhm.
For
like that
like long
positive
term.
spin. I like the
Yeah.
positive spin on the conditions instead of like, oh, these conditions are limiting and constraining. It's like, no,
Yeah.
what can like how can we like make conditions that are
Yeah.
like a good soup, you know, to like make something actually grow from it or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
So then here's the question, because I know for me at a certain stage in my life, I'd be listening to this and be like, okay, so how do I know the difference? Like, how is this tangible? Like, how do I tangibly do this? Like, how do I know that the person I'm with is the love of my life? How do I know the person that I'm friends with is going to be my friend forever? Or how do I, because I get these questions all the time from people who are like, I've been friends with someone for 15 years and I just know I don't want to do life with them. How do I tell them? And I'm like, whew, let's go. Let's talk about friendship breakups. Let's talk about knowing this is an inner circle. Let's talk about reforming relationships. So, how does this become tangible? How do we tangibly explain unconditional love? How do we, in a pragmatic way, integrate this into our lives?
I think you got to think about the why behind it, right? Like, for example, a transactional love or like a transactional intimacy. The why is I want this physically from you in exchange for this from you. And once that's over, that's done. Whereas with unconditional love, I think it's probably more of a physiological process, like what Madame Genevieve was talking about, where you have those feelings, you have that pull towards the person, even if the conditions can't allow for them to be in your life in, a super close way. And then I think there's and what's difficult for me actually now is to think about conditional love because to me, it's more about access rather than love.
Mm,
The fact that I like, probably if I can say that I love somebody, it is unconditional. That doesn't mean they get unconditional access, but there are conditions that we can create that will allow for certain access, right? And for a certain level of intimacy and for a certain amount of time spent together. Um, yeah.
That's an important distinction for sure, the access element, because there definitely love exists, certainly for me, and I think for lots of other people, where you know that continuing to be involved in each other's lives maybe is not beneficial for you,
mm,
but the love still exists. You're just not accessing each other anymore.
yeah. Yeah. How does that, what if, I guess if one person had unconditional love and the other person didn't, then the person with unconditional love would radically probably accept better the change in a relationship than the person who didn't. I wonder if that's an indicator in some way. Like sometimes I'll hear from people who are, again, I think like I was going to say in your trauma, but that's loosely, that's just how I think about it. When they say things like, how will we be close if you don't know what I'm doing on a daily or weekly basis? And I'm like, oh, let's talk about that. What are you asking me to know about you? Are you asking me what I know about you, the consciousness, or what you're doing in your calendar day, which might be the way some people form relationships. Like, you ever meet those like old ladies that talk to their best friends on the phone every day for 40 years? And they're so
Yeah.
cute and I fucking love it and it's great. And look, my bestie and I give her as an example because we've known each other since we were 9, literally seen me through every relationship, her college graduation, all the messiness, every bill we maybe didn't pay or did pay, everything we made a mistake on, every ugly moment of our life. This woman and I have seen it through. And I will say that we have gone through periods of our friendship where we talk every day, to we talk on occasion, to we text every day, to we Marco Polo every day or Snapchat or Instagram every day to, hey, I'm really busy this week, but like next week. And then next week comes along, I'm really busy this week. Next month, okay, we're really busy, but also I love you. Also, let me call your mom really fast to let her know I love her too. And it's like we have these relationships that we're trying to adapt with the changes because we know for the next 50 years, it's not going to get any more consistent. She's a gig worker. I'm I'm a YouTuber, same thing. We're both 1099s, okay? We're both out here trying to do the arty thing, the our independent life thing. So I guess, what am I trying to get at, girls? Wait, what was the point? Wait, no. Anybody know where I was going with that?
How do you know when you have the unconditional
Yes.
love, who is a true friend?
That one. Even through the ups and downs, the not talking, the talking. Because again, we keep describing things. It's so weird when we say it out loud now. We keep describing things that I could do from a stranger to inner circle, but what is it that makes it different?
Okay,
Right.
so I think this is where like your work, Brittany, comes into play in like introspection and knowing yourself.
Mm.
And like being a full person, because if you think about like the kind of like woundedness that happens from some people, if like, oh, we're not seeing each other as much as possible, I'm gonna get hurt and then the relationship's gonna end. Like, why did that happen?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like if both parties are able to be introspective and they communicate about those kinds of things,
Right.
I think it's much more likely to happen, if that makes sense, or at least one of the parties being more introspective
So I
so
guess
that
the
you can
question is,
understand.
when do you know it's trauma? When do you know it's a lack of introspection? When do you know it's just like, hey, maybe I am being a shitty fucking friend?
Mm.
How do you have those conversations with people in your
Well,
life?
I think people are more likely to be shitty friends if they lack introspection.
True.
So is that true?
Maybe. I
Yeah.
think so.
I
So
think it is.
I would
Yeah.
say,
I think
yeah.
it is. Mm-hmm.
I think that it's probably very difficult to be a good friend if you lack at least a little bit of introspection.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's kind of a part of consideration, right?
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially when you're asking someone to associate with you, bond with you, make time for you,
Yeah.
recognize you as a consciousness.
Right. Like, why am I
Mhm.
being affected by this person's lack of, ability to be in my life? Why does that hurt my feelings? What is going
Yes.
on there?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I
I
wonder
don't know
the
if I
other
answered any
way
question, but
to like, at what point am I actually being a neglectful or abandoning friend too? Because
yes.
that's something
Mm.
that
That's good. Yeah, that happened in my last relationship that ended, actually. Like, how do you know when the needs are incompatible versus when you're, cutting it off too quick? Sorry,
yeah,
I think I
yeah,
derailed
when are
your
you being
point.
like avoidant? Because
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
haven't I think the types of people who do need more from me just kind of naturally fell off, but then I wonder, oh, is it a possibility that I was in the wrong by letting those
Yeah.
relationships fall off?
That's what
Is
I
that something
wonder.
with me too? Or am I being a reasonable person who is being conservative with my time and energy?
Or is it back to the
Right.
resonance thing, and you kind of
Mm.
match up with people you resonate with, on one level or the other, and you kind of end up fitting with people who have hopefully compatible needs with you, who resonate with you in that way.
I think that's really a good way to describe it, right? Like the people who fall off, you're not fully resonating with.
And
Because
but
I
then
really don't think I don't think it's inherently a bad thing to be more
Or-
avoidant. I think it's just different needs,
yeah, but then I wonder about the people who, like, maybe it's like one way, like you're like, ooh, you drain me, so I don't want to be around you. But they're like, oh, but I want you around. And then I wonder, is it because I'm seeing something in them that I don't like in myself? Or is it, and
How
I
do you
noticed like with the
know?
people
Yeah.
that fell
Mhm.
off, it's like the people that I just kind of became friends with because of proximity, because of school. They
Mhm.
weren't people I necessarily like, yes, I chose my social groups, but
Yeah.
I have to see these people every day. I'm gonna
Mhm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
form
That's
these friendships.
influencing, yeah.
Whereas in my adult life, even though yes, I have to see you at work every day, I still it's not like, I feel like this is maybe a mistake we make in schools, is like we tell children to go be friends with everyone. and then that kind of gets carried over, and then you kind of force yourself to hang out with people you don't want to hang out with. But as an adult, like, nobody gives a shit if you're like friends with everyone, as long as you
Yeah.
go do your job and go home, right? And so with adult I know some people like say how hard it is to make adult friendships, but all of my, I think, best friendships, minus my childhood best friend whom I love very much, those have been the best friendships, or friendships that I've formed as adults. I'm like, I chose you, you know, I specifically picked you out. We have like similar hobbies, similar values, all these things. Whereas more so like of the people that were elementary school, middle school, high school, some of them fell off as we grew apart, but not necessarily because they wanted that.
Yeah. Somebody in chat said, JJ said, how much of making it work is worth it with those unconditional love relationships? I would say if it's unconditional, then it's worth the universe. Like,
Yeah.
that's the point of them, to me.
Right.
What do you
Like,
think?
I would do anything, like literally, like whatever effort I could put in. If it's within my ability, capacity, I'm gonna do it.
And boundary. Mm-hmm.
And yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Because that's the
Working
part,
within
again,
boundaries,
I
of
think
course.
Harmony said it so well. The difference between the toxic and the not is the boundary. But the
Yes.
boundary also needs to be put in place, I think, for like healthy reasons. But also it's allowed to say they're temporary, because I will say, like, again, it's so hard because I've had instances with people who, like, whether it's unconditional or not, let's say I have plenty of conflict with my unconditional group, where like somebody wants more of me than I can give, and I have to say no, boundary, because now you're using me as a therapist, and like, I'm not a therapist, right? So like, this is, I love you so much, please go to a professional. And I realized like that's really hard for your friends to hear when they've been told their whole life like the person they're supposed to come to is their best friend. But there are some things that even your best friends can't solve, bros. And so I
Mhm.
know for me, like during COVID, I had to tell some of my friends, like, I think we need therapy now. I think I'm at the point in our friendship where I love you enough to know this is like, this needs a doctor. You need the doctor. Is that okay that I'm saying that? And at first it did hurt their feelings. It's interesting. You tell your friend to go to the dentist, they're like, thank you. You tell your friend to go to a therapist, and they're like, what the fuck? But they don't understand that, like, to me, the therapist is like the dentist. It's like, I'm telling you, you need to go to a specialist for something that I can't help you with your teeth, bro. Your root canal is beyond me, as is this thing you're telling me about. And I think like in unconditional relationships, I think people will either hear you or in good faith say like, oh, I think you've got that wrong about me. Actually, I think it's this. Versus in a conditional relationship, maybe suggesting therapy might always feel like an attack or always feel like, what the fuck? So I hope in unconditional relationships, you're able to hear in good faith all of the messages and filter through and still put down a boundary. Versus the conditional one, I wouldn't be surprised if people ended a friendship over someone saying go to therapy. I'd be like, hey,
Mhm.
it's hard to hear that in good faith.
I would point out also that it's an interesting use of words to say what makes an unconditional relationship worth it. Because if you think of that language, that's kind of like trying to transactionalize unconditional love.
Yeah.
You like, worth is not even part of your purview when it's actual real unconditional love.
Yeah.
You're riding towards that horizon of horror. Fuck
Yeah.
everything else. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes. Like,
yeah,
I
there is
have
no
this,
worth it. Of course it's not worth it. Of course it is worth it. You know, that doesn't make sense.
it's not a
when you're talking
choice.
about-
You're not choosing to give worth or spend or invest.
You're going to do what it takes, and that doesn't mean you're going to let people walk all over you. That means you're going to do the fucking hard work it takes to implement the boundaries to make this fucking thing work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, I almost forgot, but I think I'm getting it back. One
I
thing that I
understand.
think is, I don't know if this is necessarily characteristic of unconditional love, but I think in healthy relationships, you want to have a benefit of the doubt and trust that you don't necessarily afford to other people. And this is something that was characteristic, I think, of in the past when I've had toxic relationships, is I wasn't given the benefit of the doubt, and I didn't always give the benefit of the doubt to them either. Whereas in healthier relationships, you know, maybe something will sound off in like a different regular conversation, but in this relationship, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. I know what's up. Like, for example, my inner circle can call me bitch, whore, slut, but I know it's coming from a place of love. If some random person was using those words with me, I'd be like, all right, like, I'm not going to assume that you're being friendly, or even if they are being friendly, like, inappropriate. This is not the way we joke with people we just met. Goodbye. So there's like this benefit of a doubt,
Yeah.
an unconditional love that at least I've noticed I afford to people in my life, that makes that relationship different from, even if I would, for example, feed a stranger or take care of them or whatever, help them out, but I'm not going to give them that benefit of the doubt.
That kind of goes in line with what Brittany was saying about like being able to tell someone something that could potentially be hurtful. Like, I think you should probably seek out a therapist, right? Like, if you know you're giving somebody the benefit of the doubt that they're saying that because they genuinely love you and have your best interest at heart, you're more likely to actually receive that information and consider it versus like someone on the internet who's like, bitch, you need therapy. You know, I'm kind of like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, literally, if my farm brother came to me more than any, and even my siblings, even within my inner circle, I wouldn't take. It depends on who's giving the advice. You know what I'm saying? But I have trusted people even within that inner circle. Like when if my farm brother came to me, and was like, "Hey, I feel like maybe you should go see a therapist again." I'd be like, "Oh shit, what are you seeing, bro?" Because I trust him
Yeah.
to be so good, because he has a tendency not to project his values onto me. But my other inner circle people, sometimes they fail on that front and project their values onto me. Like sometimes I'll have my friends or family watch my work and they're like, "I don't like the way you do your job." I'm like, no. I'm like, if you're talking about values that I'm espousing, we're not having this conversation. They're like, "Yeah, I feel like when you say this, it comes off like you're saying this." And I was like, "Yes, because you're a conservative. So when you're hearing me say it, you only hear me saying this. Like, I'm not changing my language because I'm trying to get like a more progressive audience, right? I'm trying to speak their language. Of course, I'm not trying to appeal to the conservatives." And then that's me putting down a boundary, but saying like, "Don't watch my work. Like, it's not for you. I didn't make it for you, but I still love you and I'm open to hearing your advice or criticism, but it can't come from a place of wanting to appease you, the consciousness." So if my farm brother came to me, who's a conservative, and said like, "I don't like your work, bro, because I feel like I never get to watch it." That's him acknowledging I don't get to watch it. It's about me. But if they come to you and say, "I feel like you're doing more harm than good by doing the content you're making," it's still about them, but they're trying to make it about me. It's like one of my favorite examples to use, because even though I love my family, we have a don't ask, don't tell policy of like, don't watch Britney. We don't got to talk about it because like they're so diversely different from me. But that's how we maintain sort of a radical love. Like my mom, sometimes my cousins get a little crazy and they'll call my mom and say, "Do you know Brittany's doing this on the internet?" And my mom will be like, "Hey, she's 34. You leave her alone." And then she'll call me and say like, "You better take that off the internet right now." And I'm like, "No, I love you. And like, thank you for defending me." Like that's what I think the unconditional part allows you to do, which is to tell people who are not in the inner circle, "Fuck off."
Yeah.
Okay? And then yell at your inner circle anyways about the same thing.
And
I think that's
like,
really right. Yes.
oh, sorry. I was gonna say that's when we were talking about like growing up in a loving home, that's the piece of the benefit of the doubt, right? Like when our parents made mistakes or did certain things, we knew it wasn't out of malice towards us. They didn't hate us as children, right? They just were doing what they thought was best. And that's also like, I think, a thing that maybe that you get to learn early in a medium dysfunction, as you put it, home, is you get to learn that benefit of the doubt, that I think becomes instrumental in future like unconditional love relationships.
Yeah, I do. Now, I wondered, like, again, when we're even talking about unconditional love, because I hear so many people's unique stories, like, they don't feel connected to their family, their friends, coworkers, family, anybody. And I have to ask myself, okay, how much of this is like the biological perspective, that learned experience, that trauma perspective? How much of this is even like found in science and in data in terms of like, yeah, if you grew up in enough of a dysfunctional home, bro, you're going to have a really hard time connecting to the right amount of people or even learning how to trust in the first place. And that's why you do
we
have
have
to.
that research. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have it. The ACEs. Yeah.
Mhm.
The higher your ACEs score when you're first born, the more likely you are to have a whole slew of
You got all
dysfunction,
these
addiction.
obstacles and
Yeah.
So that begs the question,
addiction, failure to
right?
connect.
When we're doing this introspection on ourselves, we have to be able to say to ourselves, okay, some of it is our who we are, but some of it is how we were raised. Some of it is our genetics. Some of it is our mental illness we haven't figured out. Because like going
The
back to
systems putting pressure on us that we're born into.
yes, like even inner circle, like you have to radically accept that the people you even unconditionally love are on their own unique journeys. They're having their own
Mhm.
unique journeys with mental health, financial health, their jobs, their personalities, who they're dating, you know, whether things are going good or bad in their lives. And sometimes the best thing you can do is wait for them. The best thing you can do is support them from a distance. Or, you know, if you're lucky, you can maybe move your life into their life, but that's usually not what ends up happening, right? Because the boundaries don't allow you to have unhealthy connections. An example would be I knew a family where I wondered if this guy was going to learn his lesson about giving his life over to his families because they were so dysfunctional. And I was so proud of him because one time, he was a friend of a friend, he was asked again, can you move into grandma's house? Because like we can't pay the bills and we need help. And I was like, don't do this again for this family. That fucks you over every fucking time. And he finally put his foot down. He's like, no, I'm married now. I have a family. I have my life. I'm not doing this for you, but I love you. And that's the way he tells his unconditional, the group, I love you, but I'm not on this journey with you. And like, there's
Yeah.
something really key to that, which is like, even our most loved people can be in a cycle of destruction that is their story. And I think that's what's so difficult. So how do you love somebody who's so destructive without it becoming your problem? Because again, it always goes back to that mythos around unconditional love, which is I would ruin my life for you. That's how much I love you, which I don't think is healthy.
No, I don't, because I think actual unconditional love is born from unconditional love for yourself. Like you can't actually have unconditional love for someone else without, you know what I mean, having that unconditional love for yourself. And we do have that. Like,
Are we born with it?
I mean, no, I don't know if we're born. No, I don't think we are. No, because I know plenty of people who like loathe them, so hate themselves. You know.
It's weird because I would say like the person in my life who's very chaotic doesn't have unconditional love for himself, but I do think he has it for me.
I was gonna say, I feel like I want to agree with you, but I can also think of examples where I've known people who, at that stage in their journey, don't love themselves.
Right.
And
But is it love
they
or
haven't.
attachment? Is it love or attachment?
No, because
though?
even when I did have unconditional love for myself, I felt like I did have it for my family. I do feel that, but maybe that my description of unconditional love, which is like that
Yeah.
profound soulmate
Yeah,
feeling.
that's
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, I think that might be slightly different. Or maybe I just don't know what that feels like.
Maybe your version
Or-
of unconditional love is also an elevated sense of unconditional love, like like a purely healthy, like you know what I mean, like the ideal, like when everything is done and healed.
I think it is, because that's kind of what I was talking about when I talk about like aspiring towards it. Because it's like that's the relationship I have. I have this relationship
Okay.
with this ideal version where I'm able to come from my proper like self-seat, like not abandoning myself, but like still able to put my ego aside and like really look at this person and understand them and see them such that like I can be detached from any decision that they make. I can
Ooh,
allow
okay,
it.
yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's not
I
so much
understand,
of this
okay.
like, I don't know if my feelings even come into play as much as, you know, like they do, but only in the sense that I'm trying to like put them in relationship to this thing. You know, they're not the thing itself. They're not the unconditional love itself, if that makes sense.
I do wonder about the question that you asked, what do we do with those chaotic people who will like ruin our lives if we allow them? I wonder if part of it is at first getting burned by them, at first testing your capacity for them, right? Like I wouldn't test my capacity for someone that I deem as like chaotic, who maybe I don't unconditionally love, but I at first test it for someone I do unconditionally love. And then I discover what my limits are and communicate those limits. It's almost like what Harmony said, love is the horizon of terror or of horror. Like I'd be willing to risk certain things, you know, and kind of go into the unknown and then based on that information readjust. But I wouldn't be willing to do that for everybody.
Right, like if we're looking at horror or terror, I'm sorry, I can't remember the quote, as this peak with love at the top. If you're not, if you don't have love, then you're not gonna scale the mountain the entire way, right? Like, I think you're gonna find a way to, like, climb back down.
I will say I do think like so much of love is like I always say there's like so many parts of a person, but I always give the number 8. Like there's 8 core parts, let's say, and those parts are the parts that are like very significant to you and make or break a connection with somebody. So I could have that connection. Like I feel like you guys obviously see some parts of me and those parts of us are overlapping and connecting, and therefore I have like a closer relationship to you. Like I love you more than the everybody else. Because the everybody else are people that I'm like they're strangers or people that I love as like a human, but like I don't know them. I don't know their names. I don't know how to make a, like an image to them. I don't have them in my subconscious. Like you guys are people that I think about and I'm like, I hope they're doing well. And, I think I can get excited to see you every month. It's like something I look forward to doing. So when I think about my connection to you guys, I'm recognizing what parts of me are connecting with you. And then recognizing also what parts of me aren't connecting with you, not because we haven't tried or maybe they haven't come up or maybe they just don't need to, but because the relationship has naturally formed to either bring those parts out or not. But I feel like with everybody here, I've formed like really natural relationships. Like we didn't need to push anything. Nothing had to be like forced. We didn't like, even though like some of us worked together, we didn't have to be in a board meeting together. We didn't have to be in the, what it was more like an effort had to be made just a little bit. And I felt like I made the tiniest bit of effort and this was created. And I'm like, oh, how exciting. But only I assume because you guys also kind of felt like it was just enough effort, but not too much to feel like it was too hard. Like this feels like the easiest thing I've ever ended up doing with a group of people. It just happened so quick and so easy. And I assume that's because we see parts of each other. What do you guys think it was? What do you think it is?
I think that you could use love to describe that, maybe not in the most grand sense of the word, but like if you define love as a mutually accelerated disclosure, to borrow from, our favorite philosopher, Vervaeke. So like, yeah, mutually accelerated disclosure, I disclosed something, and Brittany, okay, you disclosed yourself to us in, your philosophy. We responded by however we met you, and then we in turn opened a little bit up to us, and then you opened up more to us, and then back and forth until you get just this thing. And then the motion of that just kind of makes it so easy. So you don't have to like, and that's why it's a process and a pattern, like you get into the swing of it and it just goes and it opens up.
I do also think that us four in particular, we have, and again, I'm that type of person, but I think we do have a lot in common in terms of values and perspective. And that's just something I noticed because of who I am. I'm definitely like, how are we similar? And how are we different? But I think we have the right level of shared perspective to where we, and we also want similar energies, right? In a group, we don't want to yell and scream at each other unless it's like passionate and we're not trying to win anything. So I think that's partially it too. And I think we had like similar, like when a commenter brought up like, hey, like what, about taking the friendships for granted. All of us have like relationships with our families. And that I think also kind of helps with that shared perspective.
Yeah, I also think we're all pretty, and I mean this in the nicest way, like really low maintenance. Like it feels like our even the way we like organize these events, like this week I was really low on spoons and you girls were like, no big deal. We got it. It's fine. And I was like, okay. I felt like I was abandoning everybody. And then I was like, they understood and they just like took the reins and it was fine. But it feels like very low maintenance, which is really nice. And I think there doesn't feel like anything. I don't feel like anything bad is ever going to happen from this. Like I can't even imagine what bad could come from this. And maybe that's where the trust comes in, because I'm getting such good energy and such good vibes consistently that I'm like, I couldn't even imagine this turning out bad. You know what I mean? Which is probably the beginning of the better possibility for like more intimacy or more love or more connection or more something in a healthy sense.
Yeah. I feel like very early on, I felt mutual trust, mutual respect between us, as well as the benefit of the doubt, where if somebody doesn't respond to a Discord message right away, probably me, because I'm really bad at checking my messages. I You guys aren't assuming that I hate you or that like I never want to talk to you again or anything. So that's really appreciated and absolutely helps that we all kind of are low maintenance in that way.
Now, do you guys think there is I think I wrote to you guys this question. Do you think the goal should be to seek out unconditional love?
I think
I
it
don't
depends on how you define it, but I'm inclined to say no.
I'm inclined to say not with everyone, but I think I want to say we talked about this at one point before. In my opinion, the purpose of us as a human species and this human existence that we're having on this planet really does boil down to love and our capacity to love, our ability to feel loved, all of that sort of stuff. So, because I believe that, I also believe that that part of our journey is experiencing unconditional love both ways, but that doesn't mean that it should be with every relationship should look that way. I think that
Mhm.
we should all seek to find our inner circles and have a level of trust and unconditional love with a small group of people.
Mhm.
But I also wonder, like, about the everyone, right? Like the 8 billion people.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be some people that I think either physiologically can't experience it or can't develop it, because I do believe that you have to develop the capacity to have unconditional love. I don't think you're born with it. Um, but you or like their conditions, their circumstances are just not gonna allow them to achieve that in this lifetime. And so I do wonder if we do believe that that is like something that people should strive for. What do we say to the people that either physiologically can't or their circumstances are so horrid that that's not even something that they can take the time to develop? They probably have that physiological mammalian kind of maybe love or attachment the way my cat loves me. I know he's not thinking very deeply about it, but I provide him the resources, right? And so some humans likely, have that level of attachment. But what do you say? Do you just go like, okay, well, that's your life, right? Or is there some sort of, if we were to believe that people should strive for this, is there a responsibility of people who had the I want to say the word privilege, but not in but I think like growing up in a
It's a
loving home
privilege.
is a privilege, right?
Definitely is a privilege.
People who grew up with parents who loved them emotionally, even if they couldn't express that physically all the time. So the people who grew up with that, is there a responsibility to try and teach how to achieve this
Mm.
in any way, if we were to believe that this is what humans should strive for? If we don't believe that that's what humans should strive for, obviously, like, you don't owe anyone anything. But if you think that that is something they should, what do we do with that?
Genevieve, when you made your statement, I know you're just speaking from your values and your perspective and what you think, but is it a should or is it just a that's what I like would want people to strive? What did you mean by it?
I guess it's more of like a would want or like an ideal, right? Like I think that real joy probably does require these relationships that exist with the concept of unconditional love, at least in the definitions that we're kind of working with here.
Mm.
And so when I say should, I guess I mean more of like I would want that. I hope for. I think that's a goal or something that
Mm-hmm.
I guess I
I
don't know if
mean,
goal's the right word. Like a desire, maybe? I
Okay.
don't I'm
Okay.
I would agree with that. I think that love is one of the foundational things that's required for the well-being overall of a human. Being, we're beings who are concerned with being. Love is essential to like meaning making and being and all those things that are like so important to the well-being of a human. So I think it's okay to say that like without, can you say should without putting a moral value to it? Like this is probably going to lead to the best outcome if you value
Yeah,
love.
yeah.
Like,
That's a good way to
where
that's a
you're
good way to put
totally
it.
free to do what you want. And I understand subjective experience and the relationship that each subjective person has to their environment leads them to a lot of different places. If you're in a crappy situation, if you have shit life syndrome, as Dr. K calls it, like you're much more likely to be in a scarcity mindset. And then like the scarcity stuff and then more Machiavellian tendencies are probably going to be very adaptive for you. So like love might not seem valuable, from that point of view. But I would just say, is that flourishing? That's survival. That's not thriving, So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, well, let's see if I remember any of the reasons I crossed my fingers for any of these thoughts. Okay, first, I
have
want to
my
say
notes.
that I do believe my cat loves me unconditionally because I love her unconditionally, and I refuse to believe she doesn't. I refuse to believe she only begs me for pets because she wants pets and not because she doesn't want to spend time with me. Okay, I refuse to believe it. And then JJ asked, do you need to see all parts of a person to have unconditional love for them? No, I would say you wouldn't. You would need to see their consciousness, which is not the same thing to me as seeing all of the parts of them. It's seeing enough of the parts of them to have a real grasp on it and then to want and desire that connection, which I think is like finding a soulmate. It's like that ding in the universe that kind of like lights up when you're like, oh, like I'm going to do something with this person, which I feel to a lesser degree with most people I meet. Like I think I felt it when I first talked to Harmony and I was like, oh, ding. Like, but it wasn't like a
Same.
but it was something, right? There was something I was like,
Yeah.
something's happening here. Okay.
Agree. Yeah.
So like, what is that thing? And then when you have the thing, no matter what spectrum, it's like now what I have to decide how to engage with it. So I do think going back to what Arena said earlier in the very beginning of the conversation, I realized I do believe I can meet soulmates I don't decide to connect with. Because my partner and I have discussed this, where what if he and I meet the other people on the planet we could have been soulmates with romantically? Because we don't think we're the only person in the universe for each other. And then because we've decided to be monogamous, we wouldn't engage with those people, but they still exist. So what if we met one of them? I think what we would probably do is, first of all, we'd be like, what the fuck? And also we would be like, okay, like cool, there's a life that could have been my life, but isn't my life. And same with friends. I think sometimes you might have a soulmate friend who comes into your life, but maybe their like story doesn't align with yours. It'd be hard for me to imagine anyone in my inner circle deciding not to be in my inner circle anymore, but I would radically accept if that was their journey. I think it'd be emotionally extremely distraught. Like I think I would be very heartbroken, but I could imagine a logical, like I could take myself out of it and imagine a scenario in which this would fulfill them to such a degree that I would not be able to deny it to them in their limited time on earth. Like if this was really profoundly important to them for them not to speak to me for some reason, okay, I would accept it. But like I reserve the right to cry over it. And then I think that's it. I think I did it. Yeah.
Ooh, can I riff off that really quick? That question that JJ had, I saw it and it was like so good. I would actually say that one of the key elements of unconditional love is recognizing the eternal and ever unfolding moreness of the other person that you're entering into the relationship with. That means to say that they are continually going through a process of becoming, and that you realize to a very deep level that there is like an unending fount of like more to them that you have the privilege of like discovering as you like enter into this relationship of becoming with them. And that's why it's unconditional, because if you could completely see them, I guess you could make the argument that you could like foresee every interaction, you know what I mean? Like no, and it's such an important part of love that like the reason that it is what it is because it's two people who are completely always unfolding, in relationship to each other. So in that sense, like, you can't like truly, like, it's important to know that you can't like truly ever completely grasp someone because we're always changing. And that's an important part of love.
Something on that, but Sleeve T rocks with the super chat. Thank you so much, Arena. Always unintentionally casting shade on pets. Jen, you the bomb. Yay. We love Sleeve. Thank you so much for the super chat. Okay, wait, question on that, Harmony, though.
Hmm.
Because I really struggle when people say this to me, like you will never
Hmm.
fully see someone or something along those lines. My brain
Hmm.
wants to melt down because at some point, if I can predict like literally not only what you're about to say, but how you're going to pick your car or like what you're going to do next, at what point am I do I not know you? What part? What part? So
Well,
like, you know,
okay. What I mean by that is like there is this element of like people are just they're never stagnant. You know what I mean? There's not a stagnantness to people. I think you can get into a really good pattern with someone such that you can, you know, guess what they're going to do and you have that really but there's still like something that's very subjective and
mm,
about them, and that subjectivity is that like it reminds me of that quote, there's an aloneness to us that can never be satisfied no matter how much we're together with other people, but there's also a togetherness about us humans that can never you know be ameliorated no matter how solitary we are. Like that's like the thing about being a human is we're like so subjective completely, but then we have this power for like distributed cognition, and like think about all the humans that needed to exist to make everything in the rooms that we're sitting, you know what I mean? Like we're inextricably bound to humans as we are as a species, but we're also like utterly subjective in our experience. So we're both like simultaneously like so alone and simultaneously like uber connected at the same time, and like finding that that's part of the mystery I think that we enter into when we're in relationship with somebody,
I
when
was
we
I
gonna
love
have a
somebody.
say,
thought. Oh, sorry. Do you
oh,
want to go
sorry.
first?
I've
Go
had this
first.
one for a little while, so I'm gonna quickly say it. But I think part of what people can do to, I think, if they view like love as a value, is to be more thoughtful about having kids, which is what Brittany often talks about as well. I think like a lot of people who have kids willy-nilly, they do step up and they bring that love, right? But then some people are very clinical about it, or like, and having kids is inherently selfish, but if you're just like, okay, well, I have this kid, and you're almost like apathetic or indifferent to their existence, I think that kind of emotional neglect is what is like a huge barrier for people as adults to be able to form unconditional, or to be able to develop unconditional love, and to therefore have like those kinds of relationships.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
here Discord's being needy because they're a bunch of bottoms. Let me see. Discord wants to know. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Discord said most of the people with whom I have discussed, quote, unconditional love have not had a strong, thorough definition or understanding of the term unconditional. Most people have admitted there are conditions once extreme, taboo, touchy, deep personal / value conflict situations are discussed, thereby nullifying the unconditional status, which we've talked about at the beginning of the stream, right? We've gone over pretty well. But why do you think there's such like a disconnect between the word unconditional? It's so debated. I've never seen this thing debated so much on the internet. And in my brain, it seems so simple to me. But then I think, okay, not to like point at you, Harmony, but I actually think my relationship with unconditional is because I have such a lack of loneliness in my life. I have a secure attachment to the idea that I do unconditionally love people because I know it's not predicated on the relationship I'm having with myself. It's about them, but it's also about the relationship I'm having with them, not the relationship I'm having with myself. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Like when I think of my relationship of unconditional love with other people, it's not the relationship I'm having with myself. It's the relationship I'm having with myself with them.
Right, exactly. So you are an
Mhm.
important part of that, though.
Yes.
Like you are a very important part of that. Like from
Yes.
whence comes the love is important for the love,
Yes. Oh, maybe I'm
Yeah.
saying what you're saying, but without the word lonely, where like the relationship I have when I'm alone, just
Mhm.
me, well,
Mhm.
now is very, very secure, right? Like I used to feel an
Mhm.
insane amount of loneliness, right? Obviously, but now I don't feel that loneliness. But I wonder if it's because it's a different relationship. I don't think of it as actively as when I'm having the relationship with somebody else. I don't know. Maybe we are saying similar but different things. I don't know. No, I'm confused. Thoughts?
I think
Oh, sorry.
yeah, you go ahead because I'm
I
still
was
kind
going
of
to say,
thinking about
in
it.
response to the Discord comment, I don't know. I think that there have been times where my unconditional love has been tested. And, I have ended access with those people, but I've had some pretty terrible things done to me. If you know, you know. And I still hold love for those people. They just
Mhm.
can't access me in the same ways that they used to be able to. But it's been tested. And I think we all have been.
Tested?
Right. So, yeah, the unconditional love, yeah. And maybe it's not blending up puppies, sure, but there are some
Oh,
other, yeah.
okay. Here's a question I think Discord is adding on to this. Because I don't believe in altruism. Like, I don't think we do anything outside of selfishness, and I don't think
Right.
that's bad. But they said if there's no such thing as true altruism, is there true unconditional love? But what does unconditional love have to do with altruism? Unconditional love is about you. It's the relationship
Yeah.
you are having
It's
with
my
somebody else.
fuzzy
It's me.
feelings.
Yeah, it's
It's my
me.
fuzzy feelings.
So when I think of unconditional love, I'm thinking about my desire to connect with this consciousness that I feel a pull to, and I'm saying yes to the pull. I'm saying yes to the attraction. I'm saying yes to the desire to talk to this person more, and I'm saying yes to like furthering this connection.
And
Because I
that's
could have
coming
just
from a
yeah,
selfish place because I want those things.
exactly. Exactly. So why do you think there's go ahead, Harmony. Go ahead. I see you
I
thinking.
was just gonna say, why do we call it unconditional then? Because to me it still doesn't make sense, you know? I mean, I get what people are, I think, saying when they mean unconditional, but to me, and maybe again, it's just my, pedantic autism, but like, I do think we could use a better word for it. I like agape, but
Is it
The
because
word does maybe seem to trip some people up. Yeah, I can see how that
mhm.
is it
creates
because
some of the
unconditional
confusion.
sounds like without judgment?
It's similar to like the free will thing, like I also think free will is a bad way of putting it. Like if you actually think of what it's saying, it doesn't exist, but
Mm,
the idea of what people mean by it does.
mm.
I think it's kind of a similar thing. Like again, so I think it is just me being very literal with my words, but it's like you're saying that no matter what that person does, you'll still love them. But
Yes, yeah.
yeah,
Like, do we think
but
love
to
is
me
selfish?
that doesn't mean unconditional.
Discord
Um,
wants to know, is love selfish? I would say
I
yes.
think, yes,
it's
because when I love
involving
on
the
my cat,
self.
it's
Yeah, it's
me.
about the
I
self.
want to huff him.
It's involving the self, so therefore it is selfish. But I think you can have self-sacrificial love or a gift of self-love.
And love can cause you to be selfless as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
love that you have can cause you to act or make decisions in a
And I
selfless
mean,
way.
there is that thing. I mean, because of the nature of love and the fact that even if like kill yourself, like loving someone unconditionally, like because we're beings again concerned with being, like there's just such a beauty to that sacrifice, you know? So we think, oh, well, they're just getting the eudaimonia from the beauty of the self-sacrifice. You know what I mean? So I think we deceive ourselves when we get too caught up on those things. And this is also where language kind of deceives us too. Like, so we can think, oh, it's not real or it doesn't exist because we don't have these words. Our words, don't quite make sense with it or whatever. But I don't remember exactly where I was going, but I do think the language is important.
I think like the there's like oh my gosh, the connotation of the words selfish and selfless, like the negative
Mhm.
connotation of selfish
Yeah.
and the positive connotation of selfless. I do think that we cannot be truly selfless in the sense that when you do good for someone, you get those good chemicals usually, or if you don't,
Mhm.
it's like, which I think is super unhealthy. I think if you do good for someone and then resent it,
Mm.
you become like that martyr trope, and then you kind of revel in that martyr trope, which I think is also selfish, like not taking care of yourself because look at me, I'm taking care of all these people, pouring from an empty cup, so you get to be like that victim, that martyr.
Mhm.
I think that's also selfish in a way, even though it might not
Mhm.
seem like it, but I think ultimately it does come back around to being about you.
Well, if you're talking about your
Mhm.
values, then ultimately, like, what's more selfish than like your own sense of justice or morals? You know what I mean? And then acting upon those. I will say, like, for me specifically, unconditional love in this like the way that I think about it, because even my partner and I have this discussion all the time. Like, what is unconditional love? Like, for me, it's saying not only do I still want you in my life in some capacity, I will make an effort for you in some capacity, but I think the thing that distinguishes it from other people is specifically that I want you in my life. Like or maybe I wouldn't want to use the word need, but I think I might, and just to put an emphasis on how
Mhm.
distinct it feels to me, is like I need you in my life, but at the same time radically accept that you might not need me in yours. So I can make a relationship with that. But I don't really need a lot of people in my life. I love it and I
Mm.
feel honored by it and I want it. I want so dearly like the good people in my life. But I wouldn't say that my life would change that much if the people who weren't in my inner circle had less time with me. And at the same time, I had a recent epiphany in myself that I hadn't had like just a few years ago, which is I've decided I've grown into one of my auntie's spirit, where like if everybody in my family died, I would still be very functional. I thought before it would destroy me. I thought if everyone in my inner circle died tomorrow, it would destroy me. But then I decided, no, no, my aunties have survived all their kids getting killed, uncles, aunties, ancestors, all these people dying because of war. I could do it too. Like, I'm as strong as them, but only because I've recognized the relationship I have with myself and the memories of them in my heart are enough to have me radically accept their passing because I know it's going to happen anyways. So I think I went on this introspection journey where I was like, okay, why am I so devastated at the idea of everyone dying at the same time? Well, because I would be alone. So, well, that doesn't make sense. So then I had to rework my relationship with my inner circle and say, like, even if they all died, bloop, my love for myself would be there and the love for them would stay. And it would be about radically accepting that this was the journey of their individual consciousness versus assuming that their life was tied to mine. Do you get what, does that make sense?
I'm trying to work on that right now because right now I think if that happened, it would be devastating. But I'm trying to like find the most fun in my own brain and in my own
Mm,
consciousness.
mm,
But that's something that I'm trying to work on as well. Is that I mean, it's gonna happen eventually, especially like with older relatives
yeah,
and our parents, right? And that's something that's the reality
yeah,
of
yeah.
adulthood.
Just
Yeah.
yesterday, my partner and I were watching oldies, like music through the decades, and like the oldies came up from like the 60s to the 80s, the 90s, and my mom loves the 60s, she loves the oldies, and I was just thinking about like all the times, and I was like, I need to go home, and he was like, what? I was like, I'm homesick. I miss my mom, and he was like, what? I was like, I miss my parents, and then I was like, I can't. No, I refuse to go home within a year. I refuse to go home. And then I was laughing. I was like, just listening to the oldies makes me miss my mom and like want to be in a kitchen with her dancing and like laughing and making bread. And I'm sitting here like, oh, like that feeling is so specific to like I feel so it feels so, I could cry right now thinking about it. Like even with all the dysfunction I grew up in and all the controversy I talk about and all the conflict, no one else on this planet could give me the feeling I get when I'm with my inner circle and we are so connected and just like thinking about them brings me joy and I want to cry over how beautiful our connection is. And that is like part of that unconditional love.
Hmm.
By the way, I would like to check in with you guys because we're 2 hours in ish. How are we feeling? How's our spoons?
I'm good. I could probably talk for a while more yet.
Okay, just wanted to
I'm
check in with you.
good, just need to pee.
Yeah. Feel free to come in and out. If you need to pee, go pee, come back. Feel free. Absolutely.
I probably have about
Oh,
another
wait,
30
Jen.
minutes. Oh,
Okay, good. Your screen turned funny. Like you
oh,
became
weird.
like yeah, I don't know if anyone else can see it, but on
Is it
my
okay
end,
now?
no. Wait, oh my gosh, what
What's
happened?
happening?
I don't know. You look like a purple screen of like a like porn on an old 90s TV.
It looks fine for me.
Really? Oh, so it's on my
So
end.
weird. That is so weird.
Hold on. Let me
It
how do
does
I
not look fine on
YouTube, right?
YouTube.
No,
Yeah.
it does
Mhm.
not look fine on YouTube. Okay.
So
Maybe hang up and
something
come.
of
Can you hang up and
how
come
I'm
back?
feeding through you. Okay, BRB, BRB.
Okay. Okay, Discord says I've never had that feeling from another human, Brittany that is describing. That's
Yeah, I'm
so
not sure I have either, honestly.
What?
I
What are
don't
we talking
know.
about? Really?
Well, even I don't. Okay, I think this honestly might be an autism thing. What's it called? Alexithymia. Like our
Okay.
emotions, we're not always the best at like, unless we're feeling it in the moment, like remembering how it feels. You know what I mean? Which is really funny because I'm obsessed with love, but I'm like trying to think even the person I love the most in the world, which is my mom. I'm like, what does it feel like? The feeling part of it. You know what I mean? And it's very hard for me to like get in that space right now.
Wait, even other people are agreeing. You're talking about that feeling I described about like hearing a song and wanting to go home to my mom to like nostalgia. I'm talking about like,
Oh,
you grew
oh,
up
okay.
hearing
I thought you were
music.
talking about like the feeling part of unconditional love, like the
Oh,
passion
well, yeah, you
feeling
feel,
part.
well,
Yeah.
yes, no, I mean that too. Like you feel, it's like that, yes, I'm sorry. The
Mhm.
nostalgia brings on the reminder of like this
Okay.
connection. Like this is what I mean when I say like in a group of millions of people, like their consciousness lights up to me. My love for
Yes.
them lights up. Like
Okay.
now, to be fair, this could be a neurodivergent thing as well. My mom says I've been this way since I was a child, where Brittany loves very strongly and very
Hmm.
aggressively. Like she will smother you in love. And I do tend to do that, but when I really, really feel connected to people, I want to remind them, like, I love you so fucking much. Do not be a pain in my life right now. I love you so much. And I will do anything I can to remind those people I love them so much, but I love them in a way that makes me like, I could cry on the spot thinking about it because I just like, I love them so much. But a part of me also knows that's my total feelings. Like, I'm totally in my feelings about how much I love them. But if I'm
Hmm.
like reasonable and rational, then like I'm having like a more descriptive relationship with it. But if you're in your feelings, if you're in like your deep feelings about your love for your mom, can you
Hmm.
like, does it feel like mine just feels like overwhelming, like joy? Like I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like I want to call her right now. I want to ditch you guys and go call my mom.
It feels very overwhelming and like this rising feeling inside me, like and it makes me want to cry.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 Hmm.
Yeah.
Mm. I think yeah, I have definitely felt nostalgia when I didn't live with my parents when I was home when I lived in Detroit 1 year. And for Christmas, that was like the only year that I listened to Christmas music also. But I remember going home on at Christmas break and like just driving down the streets of the city that I live in. I was like, oh, it just
Yeah.
felt like, and I was like, I knew I was going home to my
Yes.
parents and like their Christmas traditions. And I'd been away in this like the city that was like so different than anything I'd experienced before. It's just
Yeah.
this very, yeah. That
Yeah.
home feeling is very synonymous to love, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
and that's it. That's interesting to me. Like the attachment, I think, comes into play there, and like how we're mammals and we're nurtured from a young age. Those patterns get like grooved into our brain and we seek them and we feel really good, in that. Yeah.
You know how
That's like a big part of love.
they say like home is where the heart is. So I believe this. Like I 100% think this is real. Like when I see my husband, I'm like I'm home. Like okay, and then when I see my parents or I think of them, that's home. But also a physical location. Like all of my siblings, all of us adults, we go, "Hey, you're going home," and we don't mean our apartments. We mean mom and dad's house. Like that's home to us because
Hmm.
that's our ground zero. That's like, and it's
Hmm.
wherever my parents live, by the way. My parents are the home. We're not referencing the house. We're referencing my parents because our parents are our home. And that's we're
Hmm.
so lucky that our parents are our home. Not everybody gets that. And so,
Hmm.
that plays into the role of understanding what I think is unconditional love as well. Is I really think my parents taught it to us. I think they have it for us as children. I do. As
Hmm.
much as like we've rebelled, my siblings, all the drama, I can't say it on the internet. But the lies some of my siblings have told about my parents or us as siblings going through the rebellious stages were so vicious. A normal person would never be able to forgive them. And my parents go, I get it. I love you. And I'm like, fuck. That is so profound that they understood their kids were going through such a horrible just time in their life, whether they're responsible for part of it or not. And they rebelliously told a lie they eventually admitted to. Like, we've all been, my parents taught us to lie really good. And they just sat there and went, I love you. come over, I'm making food. And I'm like, I'm gonna vomit. That's so beautiful, bro. In a world where everybody is so casual with like snipping out their own kids or snipping out their own family or snipping out their own lovers, like I get it. But at the same time, like my parents they showed me what unconditional love is. It's
Mhm.
very hard to find it in
Same.
life, I think. It's very profound. It's,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, it's beautiful.
And
Mhm.
that's where like chosen family becomes a thing. But I wonder if like you didn't
Mhm.
have that guidance from your parents, that's where people get in those codependent chosen family dynamics where it's it's almost there and maybe it's better than nothing, right? But
Mm.
it's like what do you do? How do you learn this, right? Because it was very formative for me at least, right? Like I can't pinpoint the exact moment that like brought me to where I am today. And like of course I did a lot of work on my end, but I had such a solid foundation to
Yeah.
start on.
Yeah.
And you know, so
Yeah.
it's like you got to almost like decide that this is what you want to pursue and
Right.
then do the correct amount of research, find the right tools, which can
Like,
be
if you
like
don't have a
very
foundation,
challenging.
then you have to
Mhm.
seek it out and build your own, and that's really challenging, I think.
Yeah, and even though I had such a good an example, I will say throughout my 20s, it took me a long time to figure out who was appropriate chosen family. So in hindsight, now I have a few people that are my chosen family. I see them the same way that I see my biological family. Like they're very like profoundly important to me. But it took me a long time to actually realize like how do you choose family even though not everyone's born into family they choose. So I understand that. Like I didn't have to choose my bio family. I think I was naturally born into an environment where we would choose each other. But but other people don't always choose their bio family. I just want to give you guys a shout out. But what do you do, I guess, when you don't have that lived experience, you don't see it? Like, does anyone have any advice? Because people in comments, they don't have this with their parents. So, like, what tools can we give them?
Well, I think that you can always have the goal of having that love for yourself. Um, I think it's really hard, and it's a really it's a harsh reality, that like the reason that I think that love is so important is because it is a really big deal,
Yeah.
and like having access to it as a kid really matters.
Yeah.
So like, what happens if you didn't, I would first off say, you know, maybe you didn't have the type of love that you think you should have. Like I think about my parents, even as you were just talking, Brittany, like my parents were abusive and neglectful to me as well. Like they seriously wounded me too. Yes, they were committed to me, they fed me, they had good intentions, they're not malicious people. And I have it a lot better than other people, who have
Mm-hmm.
parents who actively worked to, against them instead of just, neglecting, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and those wounds have taken years and years and years of my life to heal. So like, I really understand that. But I would say that again, like just the tiniest little speck of love can snowball into something bigger. And the fact that you are a human being means that you are capable of making connections. You're capable of finding that little speck that's going to snowball into something bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Start with yourself. Start with having those loving relationship with yourself, that loving relationship with yourself. And I think a big part of that, I think a huge part of agape, which is maybe distinct from unconditional love, but I think they're similar enough. But a huge part of agape is forgiveness.
Mm.
And that's how you can show yourself unconditional love, by forgiving your parents for their failure.
Yeah.
And that is maybe just enough of a tiny little speck that can grow into something bigger. But I think
Mm.
that might be a really good place to start. That would
Forgiveness
be
is
my
so
advice.
key. I can't believe we didn't talk about it this whole time. Forgiveness is
I
absolutely
know.
a key to
That's the
unconditional
same
love.
thing. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
That
my
feels
gosh.
like duh.
And I do think a lot of this is just not to be too like, but the science shows like this is a therapy issue as well. Like realistically, we can talk about philosophy all day, but child abandonment or neglect in childhood is a trauma issue as well. So you're going to have to go to
Mhm.
therapy, my friends. But
Therapy
yes,
can give you lots of tools for
lots of
self-love.
tools. But I
Mhm.
can't believe we haven't spoken about forgiveness, such a key point, which I think is what I'm really describing when I talk about my parents forgiving their children, for us forgiving them. It's a mutual symbiotic forgiveness, and it's not for them or for us, it's for ourselves. My parents
Mhm.
let go of the attachment to their children being perfect so they can unconditionally love them. I let go of the attachment of my parents being perfect so I can unconditionally love them. But again, that's because I know the consciousness that they are at their root is such a good consciousness. Like, they're such good people. This would be very different maybe if I had like parents I didn't think at their core were very good people, right? That would be a very unique experience. And I don't have that one. So I am speaking from a place where I get to say I felt abused and I felt unconditional love at the same time. And what a fucking conundrum that is.
Horizon of the horror, baby. Horizon of the fucking horror.
I was gonna say, I think the first thing is also to admit that maybe this is something that you want, because it can be hard. You can say, no, I don't want this. I don't need this. Who needs this? But we are social animals. I'm sure there are exceptions of people who can physiologically, psychologically be healthy without these connections. I don't know. Or is it healthy if it's like some sort of mutation that prevent? I don't know. But admitting that this is what you want, also grieving, especially, like, it honestly breaks my heart at people who have babies and children just to be apathetic towards them or indifferent. Like, that makes me want to start crying right now.
Mm.
There's
But
usually lots of
therapy,
reasons for it at different
yeah,
levels. Yeah.
but like, grieve that you were not shown this love by the people who were supposed to show it to you. And if, once you are an adult, when you are an adult, gathering tools such as therapy. I do also think exercise is a great way to love yourself, to begin to love yourself. It's also, connected with discipline. And it is also, like, in a way, self-sacrificial. It's not necessarily hedonistic, though it can be. But moving your body, finding, ways to nourish your body also in ways that are healthy for you, going to the doctor, going to the dentist, when you have the resources, if you have the insurance, obviously. But, prioritizing your mental, physical health. I think starting with physical can also really improve the mental too. They both work in such conjunction with each other. So I think
We're
even
not
like
just brains, we're bodies.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes, yeah. I think even willpowering in the beginning, but
Yeah.
once you start to feel the physical changes in your body, you will, I think, be more so encouraged to continue with that. So yeah, in conjunction with therapy, introspection, grieving what you were, not given, what you were not provided with. And I think ultimately towards probably the forgiveness will come, like, not towards the end of the journey, because the journey never ends, but I think the forgiveness is something that you work up to.
Yeah.
But I think therapy, exercise, taking care of yourself, getting the basics really down can help
And
you
if you
start
have
to allow the
trauma, research nervous system regulation.
Yes.
Polyvagal therapy
Yes.
is really important if you have trauma, taking care of your nervous system. I would just add that. Yeah.
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 Well, I don't think that you have to love yourself unconditionally in order to love others unconditionally. I think if you are seeking that out, that starting with yourself is 100% going to be the best first step, and really delving into what that looks like in all forms, as you ladies just mentioned.
Yeah. And I would
And also,
Mhm.
oh, sorry.
No,
I
go
was going
ahead.
to say, when you are a child, you are like a very self-focused, very like I don't know when kids get theory of mind, but when you're a very young child, you are a purely selfish being. So I think that is how you have to start out on this journey, is think, okay, what are my physical needs? Yes, I'm providing them for myself, but almost think of yourself as like that inner child and taking care of that kiddo.
I will
Well,
say
the self is inherently dialogical, so like you have to have a relationship with it.
I will say this suggestion is a very difficult one, but I'll say if you're my category of person, it was the key to any kind of recovery on my end, which was like to move out of your parents' house. Because like if you're in an environment with people who not only don't see you, but you feel constantly conflicted with and they're constantly triggering you, even if they love you. My parents, I do think they unconditionally love me and they still trigger the fuck out of me all the time because like when
Hmm.
you come from different realities and they can't see parts of you and they want to focus on those parts, it can become very like a feeling of like just like you're going crazy a little bit. So I will say like love or distance makes the heart grow fonder. And getting out of your parents' house is like one of my practices out of all my siblings, because we've all gone back home a few times. I'm the only sibling that ever stays for like less than 3 months. Cause like I come home, I'm like, what's up? Eat my parents' food, help with like chores, and then peace out. Some of my siblings can stay for years. I love that for them, but I could not. And so if you're the kind of person that like loves your family, loves your environment, or even doesn't, like if it takes 3 jobs, like it might transform your life to come home to an apartment that isn't going to attack you. Coming home to a rented room with a roommate who's going to mind their own business. Like I know it sounds really difficult, but the best time to do this is when you're single and have nothing to lose. As somebody who's lived out of her car multiple times, it kind of there's something to it. Now, if that's too difficult, I understand, but just like word to the wise, if you have the capabilities and you believe in yourself enough to do it and you think you could do it, I will say it saved my life. Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
That's such
I
a key
agree.
thing. And with how humans are as animals, we are supposed to leave the nest, so to speak. We're not supposed to be dependent on them or even be around them full time past a certain age. Even like in teenagehood, you start spending more time outside with your friends, etc. You don't really want to come home. You like start hanging out, etc. So I think moving out when you are an adult is a big, big thing that is worth the self-sacrifice to get done,
Yeah.
especially if you're in a situation where you can't access the love.
And I know it's difficult, easier said than done, because of course, like depending on where you live or what tools your parents even gave you in the first place, like you might not even know how to rent an apartment. So that's why I recommend roommates, because that means somebody already has a place and is looking for a roommate. It might be easier for you to start that process. And no matter what you do, if you're going to start on this journey of not only forgiveness and learning to love yourself and figuring out yourself as a person, like you are picking a very like hard path, but has some of the best and reaps the best rewards. And I think that's what you have to remember is like it's not easy taking care of yourself or being a whole human being or recognizing that you have dysfunction you have to fix. Like it is so difficult and it's a lifelong journey. It just like I will say at this time in my life, if you ever watched my earlier content, obviously it was way harder before. I'm in the easy, like now it's easy. But like before, it was like an everyday, like constant struggle. It felt like my life was ending every day. And now it feels much different. So I will say the time in your life is the hardest, which by the way, also my relationships were the hardest. My friendships were the hardest. My like learning how to trust people was the hardest. So I will say, even when it comes to unconditional love, my unconditional love got better and more clear the healthier I got. Like I was able to
Yes,
recognize yes,
Mm-hmm.
that relationship, the healthier I got.
that's what I mean when I say that you have to have unconditional love for yourself in order to love someone else. Sorry, I've been thinking about that because I wanted to clarify because I actually think it's good. Sorry, little tangent, but in our past we agree with each other a lot, you know what I mean, which is great, and I love that. But like I think sometimes it makes for good content when we discuss what we
Mm-hmm.
like maybe are having like, oh, do we disagree on that, you know? So anyway, that's what I'm talking about when I say like you have to have unconditional love for yourself.
Yeah.
Like you have to like that healing, you have to like maybe that's the wrong way to say it, but it's like you, you have to have a moment of being able to sit properly in your self seat where you own yourself. You know, it's the moments when I'm abandoning myself that my ego gets triggered,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah. I
know,
get
and that
that.
I'm unable to like unconditionally love. That's what I'm talking about. Like when my ego gets triggered, I'm unable to like access that free will, I think is how you say it, Brittany. Unable to access
Mm,
my free will
mm.
such that I can choose to unconditionally live, which is why I need to be loving myself. Even if I do get like triggered, if I unconditionally love myself, I could step back and say, okay, like, why am I feeling this way? You know what I mean? Like I'm owning myself. I'm not abandoning myself in this moment, even within my hard feelings, such
Yeah.
that I don't blow up this relationship out of my triggeredness or
Yeah.
ego,
No, I
whatever.
agree with
That's
that.
that's what I'm
I
talking about.
agree that
Yeah.
it does get clear. Now, can I ask the same model of theory, only you're in a healthy position and you have a new person in your life you do not unconditionally love. I've noticed that when there's conflict with people I do not unconditionally love, but they're like there's a conflict, my brain goes, do I want to, what I think Jen said it earlier, do I want to actually fight through this conflict? Or I don't know who said it. Do I want to actually engage in this conflict and get that out the other side? And I'm shocked at how much I've been able to be like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to do
Yeah.
this.
And that's okay. To me, it's like pruning. It's like pruning a bush. Like, oh, nope, I'm going to cut this one off. I'm going to
But
cut this
you
one
know
off,
what's so funny is watching people be like, why didn't you do that journey with them? I'm like, oh,
Good question.
good question. I think it is ego as much as it is also like, I think it is ego. I think it's ego in the sense that like
ego is good.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It can be dangerous when it's wounded.
Exactly. So exactly. But it was very much like I asked myself and they were like, and I was like, oh, then no. But if it was like, yes, I think I would do it. And it's going to happen for the rest of my life multiple times. It's going to happen always, right? There's always going to be somebody who comes into your life and the conflict arises. And then your brain has to say like, do I want to move through this with them? Which is why I think I always say like I have a limited amount of spoons to move through conflict with people is what I'm actually trying to convey. I have enough people that are on their own journeys creating conflict. And I only have so many spoons to go through so much conflict with so many people. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, that really helps. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do wonder in the choosing your battles because I'm almost thinking like, okay, what about when you do choose to resolve a conflict with someone you don't unconditionally love? What made you choose to resolve that versus like conserve a spoon? Right. And I think about that too, because I'm definitely in a point where I want to pick my battles. But there's also lots of times where even though there's not unconditional love, I find that it is worth moving and working through the conflict. And I'm trying to think about what makes it worth it versus what makes it not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's just intuition for me, realistically. Like I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. And usually I might even ask myself and find out later, like, why didn't I want to do it? And sometimes I think that, again, it goes back to like predictability or like probability where you're looking at someone or a situation. You're like, this one not going to end up being worth it. But like, oh, that sounds so rejecty. Like, you're not worth it. You're not worth it. But I don't.
I was going to say, like, is
Yeah.
it worth going on the journey? But then I'm like, that sounds
But it's
really
not you. Is
fucked
it worth it to
up.
me? Like, is it worth it to me? But that still sounds so
Right.
painful for people. Like, oh my God, why aren't I ever worth anything? Why doesn't anyone ever think I'm worth anything? And I'm like,
But it only sounds
damn.
painful to people who are having their ego wounded. You know what I mean?
True.
Again with that.
True,
Like,
because it would have been, that's exactly how I thought. When I was wounded and I was traumatized, I was like, I'm not worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Versus like,
Oh, people are just like, cool. Thanks for letting me know.
Right.
Boundaries.
cool. Then
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's
little easier
a
time with
million
it.
reasons, why things work or don't work, and it is what it is.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah.
It takes I think a certain amount of like wisdom and like knowing yourself kind of to know
Because then you can apply that to your probabilities, right?
Yeah.
Because you kind of
like
know
how to
yourself
invest
enough.
wisely.
Yes.
Yeah, how to
Yeah.
invest wisely in people. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I do wonder if the worth it comes from, at least like when I'm thinking a little bit about what conflicts I choose to resolve with people I don't unconditionally love, the worth it is when I truly strongly believe or maybe even know that it's a misunderstanding. And so that becomes to me worth to work through.
To clarify
versus,
that.
Yeah, versus if I know that this is just a difference in values or they can't see me, period.
I agree.
And then it becomes not worth it unless I unconditionally love them.
No, I agree with that. Now, I know we're on a time limit here. I want to get us all out of here. Plus, it's almost like it's past midnight for me. Thank you. So I want to thank you guys for being here and give each other like maybe a last word. Because right now I'm like I'm humming with like, oh my gosh, I just like found all these new ways to talk about all these new things that I've always, you know what I mean? So I love that. And I'm so grateful for you guys having this conversation with me. Is there anything else we should go over or talk about? Anything, last words of wisdom we want to give our wonderful audience here?
I feel like I'm going to be thinking about this for the rest of the afternoon and probably even beyond that, because this did give me some really interesting perspective. I don't know that I have any good like parting wisdom or anything. What about you guys?
Ooh,
I would just. Oh yeah, go ahead.
no, well, I'll say this comment says so unconditional means passionately, and I was like, no, like wait,
Shut your
not even close.
Okay,
rewind.
Yeah,
Rewind
wait,
it.
what did we
see
say?
how passion is a part of it though, because like when you're passionate, you're like putting your work towards it. You know, you're like invested in
Right.
it.
Ooh,
You're
okay.
putting your
like,
energy towards it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Oh,
that is a part of it.
interesting. Passion, yeah, I think
So to me,
passion is like,
passion is part of it, but yeah.
oh, interesting. I don't use the word passion because like
Mhm.
passion is like momentarily, it's emotion, like happiness.
Passion feels fleeting to
Yeah,
me,
fleeting.
right?
Oh yeah,
Like,
okay,
fleeting.
There's different definitions of passion. I'm
true.
using it in the Passion of the Christ sense of the word,
Oh, that's good.
not in the like
Okay,
romantic.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good. Okay, then we could use
Yeah.
okay,
Then
a
yes.
passion. Yes, then yes.
Then it is, in fact.
Okay, that's good. That's good. That's my contribution.
I would say you gotta love yourself. That's where it starts.
I think where to jump off of Harmony's point, where it can start even maybe earlier, is to love love, to love the concept of love, to this does sound a little bit woo-woo, but almost have a faith in it.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love
And
it.
to work towards unlocking it within yourself, because I do think it is a skill that you develop. I don't think that if you throw a baby into the forest with all of its physiological needs met, that it will grow up having the capacity to unconditionally love. So it is a skill, it's a muscle that you got to work on if that's what you want, if you want to fall in love with love.
I love that. I love that. All right, ladies, as per usual, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Please enjoy your Saturdays.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to talk to my stream for a little bit before I head out. So I'm going to hang up
Okay.
on you now.
Love you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh my gosh, so great. What a great combo. Okay, let me get you guys up here. Okay, a few things. One, thank you all the ladies who were able to make it today. I'm going to go ahead. Their socials are already pinned to the top comment here, but I'm going to, of course, keep this video up for you guys to check out if you guys missed the beginning of it. Don't worry. It's going to stay up on YouTube since I only came to stream today to talk to the girls. So I'll leave their socials in the pinned comment, but I want to remind you guys that tomorrow the Discord is doing professionally taught yoga 30-minute class, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. CET, and then we have a Smash tournament a couple hours after that. So if you guys are interested, the Discord has 2 events tomorrow that we're doing. If you guys have a Switch, come join us. If you guys want to do yoga, come join us. It will be lovely. You sign up via Patreon, which helps fund the content in this channel. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it. And once again, thanks to the ladies who are here. We'll go ahead and listen to some Elvin on the way out. And this video, once again, will be saved on YouTube's playlist. So you guys can go ahead and check it out on the collab playlist that I have on my main channel. All right, guys, I will see you tomorrow on the Discord and Monday on live stream. Have the most fantastic night.